All right, would we like to get started?
Okay, we are on record at 1:21.
All right, so we are going to start with the general meeting, which should only take a couple minutes. We need to do a couple things before we get into the zoning docket. So we have an extension request. That is under tab 4 in your binder. We haven't had very many of these lately since the code changed to allow 2 years for an approval instead of 1. But this one is kind of an older one, and the history is a little bit different. So this person is asking for an additional year in order to finish an addition that we've already given one previous extension. There's been some demolition to prep for the construction. The new contractor has applied for permits. He's being held up by something in the permit office. I'm sure that's nothing to do with Baltimore City permit office, I'm sure. There was a dispute with the former contractor, and so she's hired a new contractor and is working on completing these permits. They've been applied for, but they haven't been finalized. So again, she's gotten one-year extension. She's asking for a second one. The board can grant an extension for good cause. And generally, the board does tend to approve extension requests unless the applicant hasn't made any progress at all towards their project. Yeah, so I'll give you a chance to look at what she submitted and feel free to ask questions.
I like to see that she has a new GC. The permit issues are the permit issues. I'm inclined to extend another variance. I mean, a second extension. Yeah.
I agree.
I have no issues with this.
I agree.
Okay. So the extension is approved for 1 year. Hopefully that is enough. And then, so the next thing is we had another batch of stagnant cases. They're on the back of your docket listed out. Some of them are very old, from 2020, long before my time here. I think what has happened for the vast majority of the cases on this docket is that they were either that they were actually withdrawn verbally at some point. Someone came to a hearing or called us on the phone and said, I want to withdraw. But the code says that we have to have something in writing to withdraw, which makes a lot of sense because we forget what happens in previous hearings. And so someone withdrawing verbally isn't useful to us several months later. So what I'm suggesting for future staff is that when someone withdraws at the hearing, that we have some legal pads around, that we just have them write out, my name is blah, blah, blah. Here's my appeal number, address. I want to withdraw my application, and sign it and date it so that we have something in the file that they withdrew. But again, these cases we haven't heard from the applicant in at least a year, in some cases in several years, and so I'm asking that they be dismissed, and if the applicant wants to move forward with the project, they can reapply. So does anybody have any questions, any thoughts about that request?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
All right, take a vote on dismissing the cases that are listed on the back of your docket.
I'm a yes.
I'm a yes.
Also yes.
Yes.
Okay. So we will move on to the zoning docket. Let's see here. All right, so good afternoon. Welcome to the 1 p.m. docket for the BMZA. My name is Becky Witt, and I'm the Executive Director of the BMZA. We have 4 board members here, Victor Clark, Leland Shelton, David Marcosi, and Liz Cornish. Mr. Shelton is the chairman of the board. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on mute. If you need to speak on your phone or with another person, you can do that out in the lobby. This hearing is being recorded, so when you come forward, please make sure your microphone is green. If it's red, that means it's not on. So we're going to tell you to turn it on and interrupt you if you don't turn it on. If there's feedback, you can move. Sometimes there's feedback at this table, the center table here. We might have you move to the podium if that's the case. When it's your turn to talk, you can come forward. Like I said, introduce yourself. Please spell your name for the court reporter who's sitting opposite me, and you'll take an oath before giving testimony. Please sign in on the sign-in sheet, which is on this table by the door. The board will likely vote on your appeal today, but that vote is not the final vote. By law, we have to prepare a written document called a resolution, which requires drafting and review, and it takes several weeks. We will send the resolution to you by email if you have signed in on the sign-in sheet. If you're the appellant, you'll be able to access it through Acela. We'll upload it there. And I think we can go in order. Sometimes we go out of order on the docket, but I think in this case we can go in order. There is opposition present today on 25-065, 209 East Cold Spring Lane, as well as 25-106, 7201 Park Heights Avenue, as of the last time I checked the sign-in sheet. And that's it from me. I will pass it over to Mr. Shelton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming here today. Now calling BMZA 25039, 1301 Wise Court, Mr. Nate Prettle for the applicant. The project is to construct a 2-story rear addition with rooftop deck on the property, requiring variances to bulk and yard regulations. Approval. First, we'll hear from planning and staff.
All right, so 2 variances are needed here. Minimum rear yard setback in R8, 20 feet is required, 2.5 feet is proposed to be a 17.5-foot variance, and maximum lot coverage, 80% is allowed, 93% is proposed to be a 13% variance. This property is located in the critical area. However, the amount of disturbance is less than what generally speaking, the critical area would concern itself with, according to our discussion with the critical area planner. I'll say Amanda's discussion with the critical area planner, and if you have further questions about critical area, she is going to answer them because I don't know the answer.
I will try to answer them.
Okay. I will also note that this is not going to should not weigh in on the board's decision today, but this relief would not require a variance at all under Councilman Gray's bulk and yard regulation bill that would allow full lot coverage in R8 and does not require a rear yard at all. Again, that bill has just been introduced. It hasn't even been heard in committee, so it's not like the board can apply code that has not been passed or is not even close to being passed, but it's just a point of reference there. And I'll pass it over to Mr. Walker.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So regarding the 2 variants for required yard and lot coverage, Department of Planning has no objection to those so long as the requirements of the design review process are met. And again, regarding the critical area, our coastal planner found nothing within the critical area manual that would prohibit the approval of these variances.
Thank you. Mr. Prettle, stand and be sworn, please.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and statements that you make are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Let's hear about your project.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Nate Prettle. I'm here on behalf of the applicants, and as stated by the director and planning. This is a request for a 2-story rear addition to the existing 2-story structure at 1301 Wise Court. And so our requests today in this application are based on conditions that are unique to this property, particularly its size, location, and orientation. I'm going to focus on the size of this structure. While there are 3 lots and 3 structures on the 1300 block of Wise Court, which to my knowledge the Wise Court extends a few blocks north, but to my knowledge there are not any other lots that front on Wise Court. They're primarily fronted on Highland Avenue and in some cases on Clinton Street. This lot is, out of these 3 lots, looking at its totality, this is the smallest one out of them all. The lot size is actually smaller than the end one, comparable to the one next to it. However, the structure on 1303 Wise Court, has a large addition on top of it. So we're talking, when I say a small structure, you speak to uniqueness, this is exceedingly small. I've been, it feels like pretty much every street and alley street in Baltimore, and this was shocking. I mean, the lot size is 437 square feet. An R8 minimum lot size is 750 square feet. This is non-conforming in a number of ways, but the existing structure is only 650 square feet across 2 floors. That's not 650 square feet per floor, and the property has been owned and lived in by the same family that owns it now for generations. I mean, the woman who I would call the owner, the mom of the family, lived there when she was a kid in a bedroom that was 45 square feet. And so now she's looking to have her son and probably one of his friends live there. It's unlivable as is. So when looking at renovating this property, you've got a staircase that doesn't meet modern code. And for a full gut renovation, you have to bring this up to code. Well, what that would do essentially render the second floor unusable, other than one. The bathroom would likely go away. That second bedroom would go away, and so we're really looking to have a livable property here. Again, the uniqueness comes from the size. It's also unique compared to the properties on Wise Court. It's the only one that abuts one of the more traditional, much larger lots. It abuts to its north, 1310 South Highland Avenue, which is 16 feet wide by 95 feet deep for a lot size of 1,500, or 3.5 times the size of this. It's interesting, we mentioned disturbance. In regards to critical area regulations, this massive disturbance we're talking here is 112 square feet. 112.5 square feet it's so the 9-foot addition into the rear. And so on any other lot, I would say the majority of lots in an R8 zoning district, this addition wouldn't trigger any relief for zoning code. It's solely due to the exceedingly small size of this lot, and its its location. It's hard to even call this, a traditional alley house. Basically, if you were to look at it. Actually, let me, while I'm speaking, if you mind, Mr. Chair, I'm going to hand out a couple. There's one being a letter of support from the adjacent property owner. And just some pictures to give a little bit of context. This is looking down.
If you're going to speak, can you speak into a microphone, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Director Witt. This is looking at the side that it abuts the Highland Avenue property that I spoke of, and this is looking north from Wise Court, which actually comes in on a towards the west off of Highland Avenue, and then jogs right to go north. And this is looking at the back of the homes, and you can see the larger addition on the home next to it. So should this variance be granted, we're looking at, it's still going to be an incredibly small house, a total of about 875 square feet, adding 225 square feet to the existing 650 square foot house. There's really no other way to do this. The other option would be to leave it as it is. With the code, upgrades required, to do this gut renovation, which it needs to be livable, and essentially, renders the house obsolete. There's nobody who's going to spend the money to live in this when you can't live in it. To have one bedroom and a hallway upstairs. I mean, this is still going to be smaller than many of the either studio or one bedroom apartments you'll find throughout Baltimore City. So again, the hardship comes from the unique conditions, the size of the property, and the strict application of the code. These are solely caused by the code and the conditions specific to the property. The variances are based on a desire to renovate the existing structure to allow it to meet essentially the bare minimum of modern standards and are not solely based on a desire to increase the value or income potential of the property. The variance will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate area. I think you have one way evidenced by the letter of support from the adjacent neighbor. I have been authorized to communicate that the other property on Wise Court, while they don't have anything signed in this, I was told that they can communicate they are not opposition. They just weren't able to get a signed letter from them due to work schedules. So the variances are in harmony and purpose of the intent of the code and are not otherwise precluded by any other urban renewal plans or critical, to my understanding, critical area laws. And the variance will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. And quite the opposite. I think it's contrary to the public interest and supported by the city's comprehensive master plan to allow our existing structures, our existing housing stock to be reused. And I'm going to leave it at that unless the board would like to hear more information or has any questions.
Yes, so I think everything that you just said spoke to Section 32, the Baltimore City zoning code. But, what we've noticed is that this home is located in the critical area. Have you looked at the additional requirements expected of you because you're seeking the variance for a property located in the critical area?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's my understanding that due to the limited size of disturbance, that there are no additional requirements, in the critical area. And, not just, there's plenty of development happening around here. I mean, this is, a stone's throw from, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Canton Crossing development, which is, hundreds of thousands of square feet of retail. And, there's a half dozen new multiple 100-unit apartment buildings just to the east of this, that have, orders of magnitude, greater impact on the critical area. And this, again, 100 square feet disturbance is in no way precluded by the state critical area requirements.
Ms. Wade, is there a size or magnitude, sort of threshold issue for whether or not something could be exempt from the critical area? The heightened scrutiny of the critical area, in the critical area?
In Baltimore, it's 250 square feet.
Okay. So, in keeping to that, we're just gonna stick to the variance for the minimum rear yard and maximum lot coverage.
Yes.
Okay. So you've cited that the need for the rear yard setback variance is the shallowness of the lot, the
Yes.
size of the lot.
Correct. And just the both the width and the depth of the lot. It's 12 and a half feet long. By the lot in itself today is 37 and a half feet. There's a 26-foot structure. I think it would be hard to find any other property that has been renovated to that size in Baltimore City. Sure, there are other small homes. Right off the top of my head, I am not aware of a specific address that has one quite this small. But again, there's only room for a single bedroom upstairs. And once the increased code requirements are triggered based on renovations, which is the plan for this, particularly the need to have code compliant stairs, which again, basically renders the property obsolete without granting this variance and the additional room that's necessary for anyone to live in 2025.
Any other questions?
No questions.
No questions.
No question.
I'm inclined to agree with you that that the size of the lot necessitates these two variances. I do believe that the size of the lot compared to others in the area is very small, and because of that, strict compliance with the code would essentially make much of this property unusable, uninhabitable. And because of that, that's through no fault of your own. It's a smaller, non-conforming property that already exists. We're not going to ask you to destroy your property in order to comply with its own code to build a micro home. And so, for those reasons, this I find that this is strictly caused by the code. It's not based on exclusively to a desire to enhance or improve the value or income potential of the property. It's not injurious to the use and enjoyment of other properties. I haven't seen any opposition. Nobody here today is here to oppose you for this plan. And it's also in harmony with the city code urban renewal plan, the city's master plan, and it's not in any CHAP district, I believe. In fact, in addition, would not be detrimental to the public safety or in any other way be harm others. And so for those reasons, I'm a yes for these two variances.
And I will echo some of those, especially specifically with this lot. There's a lot of peculiarity and uniqueness that happens specifically with this lot, especially in comparison to adjacent parcels. Looks like it just became a number of the rest of the parcels, you know. So it's definitely peculiar in that essence with the plats and adjacent property. So with that and everything else that the chair has said, I'm also in agreement and am okay with this variance.
Also a yes.
I'm a yes.
Thank you.
No problem. Now calling case number BMZA Appeal 25053, 822 North Carrollton Avenue, Mr. Nate Prettle for the applicant. The proposed project is to use the property as a multi-family dwelling with 15 dwelling units, requiring variances to bulk regulations and off-street parking, variance approval. First, we'll hear from planning and staff.
All right, so we partially heard this case on August 5th, and this was originally filed as a request to use the property for 20 dwelling units, obviously requiring much larger variances. The planning department recommended a 15 instead, and the applicant then agreed that 15 would be the request, and the board asked for updated plans. So those should be in your packet before you. So now there are 5 proposed units on each floor, including the basement or walkout level. So 2 variances are needed here, even with the 15. 10,875 square feet is required, 7,200 square feet exists, so it'd be a 3,675 square foot variance, and off-street parking, 15 spaces are required for 15 units. 0 are proposed, so a full 15 space variance is needed here. This property, if you recall, has a historical use as a home for the aged with 27 rooming units, so it's always had some density to it. And I'll leave it there.
So as mentioned for this appeal, it was heard last time with an initial request for 20 units. Department of Planning did recommend 15, which we were glad the applicant was agreeable to. We continue to maintain that recommendation of approval for 15 units, which is presented in the plans today. I did want to highlight some community concerns. There was worry that this was, especially when it was 20 units, proposed a rooming house or a residential care facility in disguise, which, again, just to go into the record, is not the authorization that's being sought after today. And we do encourage the applicant to reach out to the community groups and maintain contact through the rest of this project. So we are maintaining the recommendation of approval for 15 units.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Prettle.
Good afternoon, Nate Prettle. Very good, thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to procedurally, it's my understanding, since I think we had a quite lengthy hearing and went through all of the approval standards, the uniqueness, the hardship, which I believe were recognized by the board, and it was to come back. The 15-unit plan had been submitted, and so unless the board requires additional testimony, I'm here to answer any questions on that plan. I will add a couple things, particularly about the community engagement. I've reached out early on in this to the Harlan Park Neighborhood Council, and their meeting schedule didn't start back up again until September. I think both myself and the owner are committed to meeting with them. In December, I had offered up to have meetings prior to that. They said, well, our housing committee will reach out, should we want to meet with you beforehand. I followed up. I had not heard anything back from them. And that was even prior to us reducing the request to 15 units. Director Witt had mentioned, pending legislation in regards to the last appeal. I should also mention that, the variance request would not entirely, but would almost entirely go away in terms of the lot area if there's an additional bill that deals with density, and a reduction in some of the minimum lot areas. So I think, it's just to look in towards the legislative intent. This is not sort of like that far out of the realm of where folks are thinking. And just to remind you about the historical use of the home for the aged, that's what's being proposed here. The reconfigured plan, keeps 4 units on what we call the ground level. It's not a basement, it's fully at grade. And those are important units because they are going to be ADA, handicap accessible units. And, for the prospective tenant base, I think this is the majority of the units here are going to be on the ground level, and we'll call it the first floor. The reduction in the units has largely come from the upper floors just because it's easier to access these. So that's where we get our 15 units. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I urge the board to approve these variances.
Any other questions from you guys?
I'm sorry, I do have one. First of all, thank you for updating your plans. It very much helps with understanding the program at the basement level, especially. Remind me, you did mention on your last testimony, last time you were here, that you are anticipating when using the existing structure?
Correct. Correct. There will be there's portions in the rear that, while now are decks, they're going to be sort of leveled off to add space. But for all the most part, yes, what is not happening whatsoever is filling in that courtyard that's there. There will be, so there's no increase in, lot coverage or anything whatsoever. It's, entirely within the existing footprint of the building, or really within the envelope.
Thank you.
Yeah, having seen your updated plans and hearing your additional testimony today, I'm inclined to vote in favor of both the minimum lot area variance and the off-street parking variance. Beginning with the minimum lot area variance, it's your testimony, and we can see that the lot is currently improved with a former rooming house. Because of those improvements on the lot, strict compliance with the code may provide many complications for you. And because of that, getting this to a 15 dwelling unit apartment building seems to be the best use for this property. I find that the 3,675 square foot variance that you will need for the lot area isn't strictly to fill a need to improve the value of the property or the income potential of the property. And speaking again, the minimum lot area requirements really are preventing you from being able to return this to productive use. And it's completely caused by the code. The approval of the variance will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. It's in harmony with the code and the laws of the city, and it will not be detrimental to or endanger the public health, safety, or welfare. For many of those same reasons, I'm also in favor of approving the off-street parking variance. As it stands now, the lot cannot fit the necessary parking amount spaces as required by the code. This is not due to anything that you've done or the owner of the property has done, but it's strictly a harm that is caused by the code. Approving this variance will not be injurious to the life or to the use and enjoyment of the property, will not be a danger to the public health, and is not in violation of any city codes or laws. And so for those reasons, I'm in favor of both variances.
I'm a yes to both variances.
I am also yes to both.
I'm a yes to both.
Thank you, Mr. Brother.
Thank you.
Now calling BMZA 25054, 2031 West North Avenue. Mr. Prado for the applicant. The project is to use the property as a dwelling unit, 3 dwelling units, requiring variances to the bulk regulations. First, we'll be hearing from planning and staff.
Right. The request is to use the property as a multifamily dwelling with 3 dwelling units, requiring variances, actually 1 variance, minimum lot area. 1,650 square feet is required, 1,174 square feet exists, so it'd be a 476 square foot variance. And I believe, Mr. Peddle can correct me if I'm wrong, that this property is already a multifamily dwelling and that they're adding a 1 dwelling unit to go from 2 to 3. This property, under the new zoning rules, is exempt from off-street parking requirements, so there is no parking variance needed here. That's it.
So regarding 2031 West North Avenue, planning understands the proposal to be, again, the existing structure is 2 dwelling units with 1 first floor commercial unit, which as is exempt from the lot area. And the proposal is to convert the commercial unit into a dwelling unit. Planning is in support of that as it will return the vacant commercial unit to productive use with a modest variance.
Sir, will you stand and be sworn, please?
Do you swear or affirm perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Can you state and then spell your name?
My name is David Lids. Last name is spelled L-I-D-Z.
Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, once again, Nate Prettle here. I'm joined by David Lids, who is the director of the Water Bottle Co-op, which is a cooperative housing and development company. And I think before I get into this, I would like to introduce Mr. Lids and have him sort of set the stage, just briefly give a little bit of background about who his organization is and what they do.
Very briefly, we are a cooperative that has seen for a while that the blights of what other folks consider the blights of West Baltimore, we consider them opportunities. So we have raised CDFI funding to buy and renovate properties. We have 30 in our portfolio now. We use the renovation work to provide construction jobs and training to folks facing barriers to employment. Right now we are structured as a worker-owned cooperative. That means those same workers that we're bringing in to do this work own the portfolio. And as we finish properties and are now starting to rent them out, we're doing a mixed-use portfolio, which means most of our units are presented as affordable rental units, and tenants will soon be invited into the co-op. So that means the tenants also will enjoy ownership of the entire portfolio that we're building. So we are rebuilding redlined blocks in a way that doesn't push out folks who have historically been marginalized but are invited in to participate in the rebuilding and enjoy the wealth that comes from.
Great. Thank you, David. And as Mr. Lids was speaking, I handed out a couple things, including an article from the British international journalistic output, The Guardian, which did a feature on Water Bottle Co-op less than a year ago, which is pretty cool to see itself. And I think it's important to keep in mind the critical work that Mr. Lids and Water Bottle are doing in some of our most distressed areas. And that which brings us to 2031 West North Avenue. Here, I think a lot of the details have been given here, but I want to provide some of the justifications here. And so this property, while it is unique, and I'm going to touch on a few reasons, I would also like to mention that there are exceptional circumstances, and this is coming from the question 1A, question 1B. The unique aspects of this property are it's zoned OR1/residential mixed use. It has what would have been a former non-conforming commercial space on the first floor. And if you look throughout the surrounding blocks of North Avenue, including this block, there's certainly plenty of mixed use, plenty of commercial. The overwhelming majority of those, and use this block as an example, are on the corners and are zone C1. I mean, both sides of this block are zone C1, and that's the typical condition. Mr. Shelton, you know very well. The landscape over in this part of town. However, this again was a non-conforming use that would have had a path to conformance under the residential mixed use. However, there are certain the exceptional circumstances are the one, that space in itself and the level of distress that this property is in. And I had the two pictures that I handed out. One is the sort of the former commercial space you'll see on the first floor. I actually add to the sort of the unique aspect of it. While there are other mixed use properties, this was laid out and configured, and to this day, in 3 distinct spaces. There are other 2-unit properties on this that take up the entire building. There are others that have a single dwelling unit with commercial space largely vacant on the first floor unless it's on those C1 zone corners. However, this one is peculiar and I would argue unique based on its long time sort of 3 distinct space program. And that's really where we're coming from for this variance is that in order, and I'm going to have Mr. Litz add a little bit extra about some of the funding and how that relates specifically to this use. However, the unique conditions that this appeal are based on are due to the hardship created for him to do anything else with this. To use this as 2 units would frankly it does not allow the building to be its highest and best use. It would not allow this space to be renovated. And because of the condition of the building, and I think evident by, I've got a whole bunch of other pictures, I just picked one of them to hand out, the level of investment required, particularly in a distressed neighborhood like this, does not allow a project to happen unless you can get a certain extent. And here, I think we're fortunate and that the proposed use is essentially, uses the building as it is. So these peculiar and unique circumstances of the layout, work, line up with what our use is going to be. And Mr. Litz, do you mind, talking a little bit about some of the grant funding and how that relates to this use? And then if you like, you can mention some of the other programs that you've been involved in that it will take place in this block.
So we have largely been a for-profit model. We have been working on how do you achieve affordable housing and renovation and make it all model out profitably. And the answer to that is you can't really. But since we did raise CDFI funding to the level that we have, which is $6 million to this date, and we have secured 30 deeds, we did start to attract state and city grantors in the affordable housing and the supportive housing space. So we have grants. We have 1 grants. They haven't been funded yet, but we have 1 grants from Baltimore DHCD and the state DHCD, which primarily are capital grants to help us create as much affordable housing as possible. So the grants that we applied for were specifically mentioning this property as a 3-unit building, which both the city and the state liked to achieve their objectives. Is that it? Yeah.
No, that's great. And
Okay.
there's another important aspect to this appeal is that when Mr. Litz and his colleagues, they began applying for building permits, they obtained 3 billion, and this is, these things sometimes happen. This is not to, say there was mistakes or blame, but they obtained 3 permits for 3-unit use. There was an HVAC permit, to renovate 3 bathrooms. There's a plumbing permit also related to, I believe, the kitchens and the bathrooms. And then there was a gut renovation permit, as well, that sort of alluded to, there's probably could have been things on both ends that would have been clearer about it, both on the applicant and, and on the city. But I think the full intent of that was for a 3-unit renovation. Those permits were issued. It wasn't until inspections, when this came up. Again, I'm not alleging a mistake, but this just shows their intent. I think the fact that this is supported, and potentially with funding from both the city and the state specific to a 3-unit use, again, speaks to, the need for this on this block. And I'm just going to go through some of the approval standards, unless you have any questions.
Yeah, I have no reason to believe that it's not a great project. Much needed blight removal along West North Avenue, but let's get into peculiarity and unique and the approval standards.
Yes, great. So I'm just going to go down the list. For the uniqueness, I touched on a little bit. It has to do with this specific 3-unit configuration on this block while with having the OR1 RMU zoning. It is a condition that is not found otherwise. The exceptional circumstances here relate to that as well as to the conditions of the property and the level of investment that it's going to take to bring this, to livable standards. Yeah, and again, it does not happen without these. The other option is to renovate as 2-unit and leave, a blighted, first floor here. So these conditions create an unnecessary hardship in renovating the property. Absent this minimum lot area relief, it's possible that he doesn't get grant funding, that this project doesn't happen, that new affordable units are not created on West North Avenue, and so that's some of the other approval standards. This practical difficulty was not caused by the applicant in himself. It's more caused by the code and its strict application, around this proposal. The variance is not based exclusively on a desire to increase value or income. It's based solely to be able to provide affordable housing, in the real world in a way that obtains funding. And here I should add funding from the city and the state. The variance will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property, and this is you're going to be bringing back to life a long vacant and frankly unsafe structure, back to productive use with new residents in Baltimore City. The purpose, the variance is absolutely in harmony with other codes. It is not precluded by, again, I will speak to the potential grant funding through DHCD and state DHCD as evidence that this is not precluded. They would be prohibited from issuing these grants if this were precluded by other codes. And this will not be detrimental to endanger public health or safety, as I already testified before. This will represent a vast improvement in the health and safety of this block. Not only due to the structure, but the fact that I mentioned, I believe 2 weeks ago in the comprehensive master plan, one of the recommendations for community safety, or one of the, has to do with putting more eyes on the street in areas where they haven't had it for. That's straight from the comprehensive master plan. So this is an improvement, both, in terms of the structure and the ability, to have people, adding to safety in the block.
Any questions?
No questions.
No
I do
questions.
have one point. You mentioned that it seemed to be a possibility that there may be C1 area in the immediate vicinity of this. How does that relate?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. And that's something that ultimately is up to the city council, and how they decide to zone it. But I think traditionally, you would find these corner stores, as everyone here knows, the commercial and residential neighborhoods located on the corner. And so when the city went through their comprehensive rezoning in 2017, or at least when it took effect in 2017, the city designated both corners of this C1 and many other blocks throughout the city, but also on North Avenue, only the corners would be given C1 zoning. Sometimes it would bleed a little bit more into the rest of the block if there were a larger structure. Like on this block, there's the church on one side, and I believe that has commercial zoning. However, this speaks to the unique aspect of this property, that it wasn't on the corner. This longtime commercial space was in the middle of the block, and that's sort of the peculiar or unique conditions on which this application is based.
I'm inclined to vote yes for this variance, to approve the variance. I think the property is improved with a structure that has commercial at the, was historically has been commercial at the ground level and residential, it seems, at the top 2 levels. Strict compliance with the code would essentially introduce a practical difficulty. This it would make it almost very difficult to market the commercial space, to rent out the residential space, and that it could only be 2 units. It would be very expensive 2 units for this area. And so the applicant's desire to have 3 dwelling units here and to have a variance of 476 square feet of minimum lot area is not out of a desire to strictly enhance the value of the property, but to get this back into productive use. Approval of the variance would be in harmony with the code. It will not go against the city's comprehensive master plan or any other laws of the city or state. It will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of neighboring properties. And in fact, I think they would welcome it. Nor would it be endanger the life or public safety of the neighborhood. And so for those reasons, I'm a yes for the application.
Could you, maybe you already said this, but could you clarify whether you're making it under the peculiarity prong
Yes.
or the exceptional circumstances related to the property prong, or both?
Both, but I think I'm going to go with the peculiarity prong. You don't see many commercial spaces sandwiched into so many residential uses on a block like this, and so I'm going to find that is a peculiarity of the property.
I vote yes.
Did we decide the parking variance just did not apply, or, okay,
Yeah, they don't need parking here because of the bill that went into effect
oh, yeah,
in June that
Okay.
exempts, buildings up to 3 dwelling units.
great, I just wanted to make sure I understood that. I'm a yes.
I guess I can understand where the chair and others are saying about being peculiar with this commercial use currently at the base of this specific property as being peculiar. So with that, I will be a yes as well.
Thank you, Mr. Prado.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I'm very excited about this project.
Nice. Now calling case number 2565, 209 East Coast Spring Lane. Colin Wojciechowski. Colin, for the applicant. We're here for planning and staff.
All right, the request is for an educational facility, post-secondary, as a conditional use. This is a, R1 zoning district, R1C, excuse me. So that use would be allowed by conditional use in R1C, and there are 6 variances being requested here for the parking lot that already exists and is proposed to legally exist under this use permit that's being requested. I'm not going to read out all the variances right this second. I think the board could focus primarily and first on the use being requested before we get to the variances, because that, I think, is going to be a threshold issue. So you have the definition of educational facility, I believe. It's in there somewhere. So yeah, I think I'm suggesting that the board find first that this use is an educational facility before we even get to the variances, if the board would like to find that. Historically, I will say the way that the city has interpreted the code is that a parking lot by itself does not borrow the use of the owner of the parking lot. So for example, if a church owns a parking lot and it's not attached to the church lot, maybe it's across the street, the use is parking lot. Same with Johns Hopkins Hospital. If they own a parking garage and it's not attached to a building where a hospital activity is happening, the use is a parking garage. That's the principal use on the lot. So this request here is to say that a parking lot with no structure on it is an educational facility. So I'm happy to go into that more from the BMZA's point of view on that, but I'll pass it over to Mr. Walker for right now.
Thank you. So regarding 209 East Cold Spring, planning does also view this as a parking lot use. The applicant contends that because Loyola University is, of course, an academic institution, this would qualify as an educational facility. But as mentioned, the parking lot is completely separated and on its own lot, and therefore the use is a parking lot as the principal use. And having parking on a different lot as a primary use is directly addressed in the code in section 16401. And the standards laid out there are that the lot must be within 600 feet of the use, which is the case here. However, it also lays out that the facilities must be in a zoning district where parking is permitted as a conditional or permitted use, and that is not the case in the R1C district. So again, planning is opposed to the request as it's viewed as a parking lot principal use, which is not allowed. We understand that there's been some considerations to rezone the lot to allow it to have a parking lot conditional use, and planning believes that that's the correct route to go, but that this appeal is for a parking lot which is not a permitted or conditional use in the R1C district, and therefore recommend disapproval.
I'll just add in as well that there are some letters of opposition in the file. They're at the end of your file that you have. And as well, if you look at the aerial image, it's very clear that this site has been used as a parking lot for years without a use permit.
Who wants to start? We're going to start with the threshold issue of of the use of the parking lot. First though, if anybody is not an attorney, would you please stand and be sworn? Yeah.
I guess, Mr. Chair, you can just make sure anybody who, when you start to speak, if you would state your name and spell it also.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Colin Wojciechowski on behalf of Loyola University of Maryland, COLLIN. WOJCIECHOWSKI. Here for Appeal 25-065. With me today in support of this application, I have Ms. Joan Flynn, Associate Vice President at Loyola. Blaine Linquist of Kimley Horn is in the audience if there are any technical questions. Vikram Mehta, to my right, far right, President of the North Baltimore Neighborhood Coalition, or NBNC. And to my immediate right, Bill King, Vice President of Guilford Association Incorporated. We are collectively here today requesting conditional use approval as well as a number of variances to construct an education facility post-secondary on an unimproved triangular-shaped parcel owned by Loyola and located at 209 East Cold Spring Lane. After extensive community consultation spanning the last several years, Loyola requests permission to develop the parcel into a paved surface parking lot with space for 146 vehicles to park in a secure lot away from the traffic of Cold Spring Lane, wherein pedestrians can then cross to the Loyola campus directly across the street by way of a well-marked crosswalk. By designating these spots for university use, the community will benefit from having on-street parking freed for use by local residents or for no vehicular use at all. The development will be illuminated in a manner to protect the safety of those needing to park after dark while only emitting a soft glow from shielded light poles so as to respect the aesthetic of the community surrounding the lot. Finally, the development will offer some of the most robust greenery on any parking facility in the city, shielding surrounding residents from having the development in their eye line and introducing a permanent rich selection of trees, bushes, and grasses to an otherwise barren, undeveloped space. Indeed, I would go so far as to say that when completed, this will be the greenest, most beautified parking lot in the city of Baltimore. Now, I know, as Ms. Witt put it, there is a threshold matter at play here, which is whether a conditional use is even permitted by the code in this instance. I have the utmost respect, of course, for the analysis of the BMZA staff and our friends at the planning department. Let me tell you why, respectfully, I think this specific case is different. In 1978, the Appellate Court of Maryland decided the case Anderson versus Associated Professors of Loyola College in Baltimore City. In that matter, the appellate court examined Loyola's request to use two facilities inside the residential zone for educational purposes, specifically 4601 Millbrook Road as the president's residence and 4603 Millbrook Road as administrative offices. The matter came before this body and eventually made its way to the appellate court, which examined, quote, whether the use to which 4601 and 4603 Millbrook Road are being put by Loyola is within the scope of the uses permitted in an R1 district, end quote. Now, the court broke down its analysis as follows. The code at the time, which was the 1971 iteration of the code, listed nonprofit or publicly owned educational and cultural institutions, including colleges and universities, as permitted uses within the R1 district, very similar to how the code reads today. The court wrote that the zoning code, quote, makes crystalline that colleges such as Loyola are permitted within an R1 district. What is not so clear is what is meant by colleges. Now I'm going to read just a very brief portion of the court's analysis and its holding. The ordinance does not mandate that the physical properties of a school, college, or university be located upon contiguous lands. The omission of such a restriction seems to us to indicate the City Council's recognition of the impracticality of that limitation. It would, e.g., create chaos as to the University of Maryland, Baltimore City, where the various educational buildings, while in proximity to one another, are for the most part separated by thoroughfares. The same is true of the University of Baltimore. The school's property is spread over a greater distance than that of the University of Maryland, Baltimore City. A college is more than its classrooms, laboratories, and study halls. It is an undertaking that involves, in today's world, athletic fields, gymnasiums, libraries, faculty and student lounges, school newspaper offices, administrative offices, chapels, and oftentimes faculty residences. The Supreme Court of North Carolina held that the erection of a concrete 4,000-seat lighted athletic field was permitted in a single-family residential zone in which schools and colleges were allowed. The court reasoned that the day of the, quote, Little Red Schoolhouse is a thing of the past. We think it unmistakable that the primary purpose of 4601 Millbrook Road is educational, a definite part of the college program and a proper use in an R1 district. Administrative offices are also an essential part of the educational process. Without them, it is doubtful that a college could long exist. We believe that the use by Loyola of 4603 Millbrook Road as administrative offices for the colleges is in keeping with the zoning ordinance. The primary or dominant use of the Millbrook Road properties by Loyola is for education purposes. As such, they are undoubtedly permitted uses in an R1 district. An ordinance which provides for the construction of a school or college in a residence zone would encompass the right to erect or convert buildings, equipment, and the plant which ordinarily form a part of the school or college. So here, in this instance, we are lucky enough to have a case about this specific residential area of the city, this specific university, and this same specific question that the court considered is the one that we're considering today. Is the proposed use within the scope of an educational facility? Again, today in what is now the R1C district, an educational facility post-secondary is a stated conditional use subject to BMZA approval. Educational facility post-secondary is defined in the zoning code only as a type of institution, not a type of structure or use. What it says is a post-secondary institution for higher learning, such as a university or college that grants associate, bachelor, master, or doctoral degrees, a qualification that Loyola undisputably meets. Therefore, I would respectfully submit, arguably with the backing of the Appellate Court of Maryland, that by implication, uses that are in furtherance of the college's educational mission are educational facilities, and as such, again, pointing to the Appellate Court of Maryland, would be permitted in this district. I've backed into the four-factor 5406B test here again, but I believe we've demonstrated why 5406B4, the authorization would be in harmony with the purpose and intent of the code, is expressly met. As to the other three factors, the operation of the conditional use or sign would not be detrimental to the public welfare. This development is going to be just the opposite. As Ms. Witt pointed out, this is an unimproved lot where cars are. We're trying to make it better. We're trying to make this right. We're trying to beautify it, to green it, to light it for safety, and make sure that we're getting as many student vehicles out of the residential zone and onto this lot as we possibly can. As a factor two, Loyola is aware of no law, including any urban renewable plan, that would preclude the use of the property as an education facility. Factor three, the development will boost the public's interest in the area, as evidenced by the support from the relevant community stakeholders, as noted in the application, and those with me here today who are going to speak after me, as well as Council Member Mark Conway. The development will be an asset to the areas surrounding Loyola by introducing orderly parking that frees up street space for residential use, soft lighting for enhanced university and neighborhood safety, and ample greenery to beautify the lot and conceal parked cars from the street view. I'm happy to briefly go through the other factors as well. 5406A1, the nature of the proposed site. The development is situated on a triangular-shaped parcel of land directly across the street from Loyola. The odd shape, which we'd get into with variances of this parcel, renders it less than suitable for constructing really any physical structure, but making it ideal for a parking lot. A2, the resulting traffic patterns have been specifically designed, again, with years of community consultation, to maximize an easy and accessible flow of traffic in and out of the parking lot. The exit on the south end of the property is purposely situated to intersect near the Guilford Reservoir Service Road and divert traffic along the one-way Old Cold Spring Lane back out to Cold Spring Lane, as opposed to having vehicles enter into the residential Guilford neighborhood. A3 contemplates the nature of the surrounding area. The development is situated at the intersection of the south end of Loyola's campus and the neighborhood boundaries of Kernwood and Guilford. The development is, again, specifically designed to get students out of these neighborhoods and parking on this lot, which is why those community associations have offered their support for this development. A4 contemplates the proximity of dwellings, schools, churches. The most proximate place of public gathering to the development are the facilities of Loyola University, which are again right across the street. A5, accessibility of the premise for emergency vehicles, and Mr. Lindquist can speak more to this if necessary, but as demonstrated in what we attached, the access point to the development on East Cold Spring Lane, as well as all internal turning movements, have been designed to accommodate the proper space needed for emergency vehicles to enter, exit, and drive around the development with ease. A6, accessibility of light and air. The open-air nature of a parking lot is not going to be interfered with in any way with light and air. A7, the type and location of adequate utilities, access road, drainage. Special care, again, has been taken to ensure that the development will adequately drain as a parking lot should, to have minimal impact on the surrounding area. Specifically, Loyola plans to install a subsurface detention structure to attenuate the post-development 100-year storm flows to pre-development conditions. That action is actually going to bring about a rate of flow from the property that will be far less than it is today. A8, the preservation of cultural and historic landmarks. It doesn't impact any. A9, the character of the neighborhood. Again, this development over the course of several years has been specifically designed with significant community consultation to respect and enhance the character of the surrounding neighborhoods. This includes lighting that will only emit a soft glow from shielded light poles and robust greenery that will shield surrounding residential areas from having the development in their eye line. And before I kick it over to our representatives from the community, who I think it's important to hear from, I will note that, as planning pointed out, there is another legal route that could effectuate this in getting the land rezoned. And over the course of the years that we've been working with the community, they didn't want that land to be an educational zone. They wanted it to remain residential. That was very important to them. And so we agreed to work with them and came up with this solution of a conditional use, which, again, I think the case law here clearly supports. And with that, I'll turn it over to.
I don't think that'll be necessary. I think we're still on the threshold issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still on the threshold
Can I
issue.
ask a couple questions? I'm curious about, because we heard a large chunk from Anderson, but we didn't hear the chunk about the parking lot in Anderson.
Right, because the court dismissed
said
that
no.
basically on a procedural issue. Well, the court didn't address parking.
Well, can
as
I
it
can I
was
read
written.
it? So I'll just read it so that the board has. I think you might actually have a copy of it because I think Amanda gave it to you. It says. And I see what you mean about the procedural issue, because the city court's order, it says, implicitly approves the use of the parking lot, but states no reason why it's so determined, other than a single sentence relative to 4603 Millbrook Road, that it also contains a parking area. The opinion of the city court is silent in regard to the parking area. And then the court says, we think that in view of the zoning ordinance, the court may have been without jurisdiction to permit the parking area in the R1 single-family residence district. The city council is the proper body to determine whether an off-street parking area is permissible at 4603 Millbrook Road unless the parking is deemed to be an accessory use, as that term is defined in the zoning ordinance. We shall remand the matter to the city court for remand to the board for a finding of whether the parking area constitutes an accessory use. So I think the reliance on this case is misplaced. I don't think the board would have any issue with Loyola constructing an administrative building on the site and having accessory parking to that building on the site. Obviously, universities have all sorts of different structures on them. They're not all classroom space. Some of them are administrative space. If the parking were accessory to an educational use, including administration or student life or whatever on the site, then we wouldn't be having this long back and forth. The only thing on the site is parking, and parking cannot be accessory, in our view, to nothing. It's just parking.
So,
I'm also inclined, when looking at the zoning tables for the R1C district, parking lot is not listed. And so to me, a parking lot is not permitted. I hear your argument that it's incidental to the educational components of Loyola University. But this lot itself, there's no accessory educational use that the parking lot would be. There's no use that the parking lot would be accessory to. It would simply be a surface parking lot, which is not allowed in the R1C district.
no, I certainly concede that point. I mean, to respond to both, Mr. Chair, I'll start with you if I could. I mean, I would argue that while it's on a separate lot that is obviously divided by Cold Spring Lane across from it, it's an accessory use to the entire campus, which is going to be directly accessed by a crosswalk going right across the street. Indeed, if we have to go the rezoning route, I think the argument is this was an obvious mistake to not have this triangle be a part of the education district already. It's been owned by Loyola for more than 60 years, I believe, and is connected to the campus. It's just the street that divides it.
Understand, but I really do think that the rezoning is what you need here, and the zoning board can't give you that relief. Because what's to say if the lot was a few hundred feet away, it's still in the R1C district. Will it still be incidental to the Loyola University's needs? Like, where do you draw that line? We cannot draw that line. Here's the board. So I'm going to be in favor of ruling that we cannot hear on this issue because surface parking lot is not allowed in the R1C district. I don't want to disapprove anything, but I'm just going to rule that we just can't hear this issue.
I've got a couple of follow-up questions. One, on what at least my thing says is page 33, 34, there's a aerial image showing from 2015. This was like a grassy, unimproved lot. And then 2018, obviously, it was clearly turned into a parking lot with lines and everything else. How did that happen?
So, and Ms. Flynn can speak more to this than I can, it has to do with actually the city coming in and needing to use that
As a
area
staging ground.
as a staging ground when the Guilford Reservoir was being updated pursuant to post 9/11 security procedures.
I'm aware. And so,
So there is a violation notice on this property for use without a permit.
okay, and so because while Loyola, I'm assuming, permitted the use of the city to use that as a staging area, it does not, that might have been something that you all could have entered into, but that shouldn't have been something that was allowed from a zoning perspective or from a use perspective, even though I understand that it wasn't Loyola using it, it was still their property.
And Loyola, I mean, we can ask questions. It has been used for Loyola parking since then. Yeah.
I understand. That was just one thing I was curious about is like because the challenge here is that when parcels like this are functionally changed to a use illegally, what it does is it makes it very difficult for us to go back to the beginning question and say, now what do we do with it? I think the key here for me is that agreeing with the chair, this is not an accessory use, despite it being used. We see cases like this all the time where things are being used but not approved. And so then that puts BMCA in a position of saying, as an example, I'm sorry you invested so much money to improve this thing. It was still not in line with the code. So I would say it's not going to be educational facility. It's going to have to be parking. I understand the stress that it places on the neighborhood. I think anybody that's driven through that neighborhood understands that and the need for surface parking in some degree. But even with the community support, legally, we can't change that zoning classification, even if it's been illegally used, even if the community is in support. All of those things are not something that we can consider because this is outside of our purview. So I think that's the key for me is that.
I think this is a Councilman Conway may have to.
Yeah, and I know he's in support, so I think, that would be sort of our recommendation as a next avenue, is that that's a common, strategy that people use in the next step.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think with respect, I would say we understand the legal impracticality, so to say, here. I do, in good faith, think that Anderson points a pretty clear path forward. I understand the board's reservation. And as I stated, Loyola had reservations of going down the rezoning route because our friends and neighbors did, and we wanted to try to respect that and see if this was a route where we could go to keep the land residential but achieve the parking goal anyway.
Yeah, because I have concerns with that too, because if it's parking, it can be parking forever. And I don't want that. Right? So let's say Loyola figures out, how students no longer have cars or something to that degree. Now we're left with something that's zoned improper, like zoned in the side of residential as a parking, and that is harder to take away. And so I think I wouldn't personally support the rezoning route, although that's not my call to make, because we have to be able to we want to look at this as not precluding future uses. And I think in general, we could all agree that in a residential area, we would like to see more houses eventually, even if that market demand doesn't exist. The other question I had is about the case precedent. I understand the argument you're making about that was, I think, the basis, which was educational facilities can be scattered site, right, especially in urban situations. Director Witt read from the decision that I think, because my question for you in that case, were they trying to approve the parking lot, or were they just saying, here is a site that's zoned residential and it's okay to turn it into an administrative building? Because I think we have to look at case law as apples to apples, right? And so if parking lot was not in the thing that they approved, I understand the legal logic that gets you there, but we're talking about a completely separate use.
Yeah, so as is often the case with some cases this old, the procedural history is not entirely clear. It came before this body, and it's not clear actually what this body said as far as the parking as an accessory use to the office facility. As Director Witt pointed out, the court, the Baltimore City Circuit Court, in kind of a one-line nothingness says, well, the parking seems fine too. The Appellate Court of Maryland says the Circuit Court, which was reviewing everything anew, didn't actually have authority to make a parking decision because that decision-making at the time was rested with the city council as far as an accessory use, which is why I would argue that it's a procedural question that isn't really answered by that case.
Yeah, and I just also point out, just sitting in my position and looking at this, if I were administrator at Loyola, even though I understand the stress of parking, I also wouldn't want the zoning to change because I would want to be able to build something on it in the future, especially in urban campuses. You're always, and every university wants to grow. Every university wants to increase enrollment. You want that space available for dormitories or administrative buildings. And so by going down this path of rezoning a parking lot, you're also setting yourself up because it is incredibly difficult to get people to want parking to go away. And so I think that is just some unsolicited advice. I recognize that. But I think that is another thing where I want to just state that on the record, that even if you go the route to work with Councilman Conway and say we can rezone this parcel of property, as somebody that has worked in different university systems, especially in urban areas, like when I worked for the University of South Carolina, they were constantly converting parking lots back into dormitories because they realized that the economic return, both on increasing enrollment and building to house those students, or to be able to offer more state-of-the-art facilities to attract new students, certainly outweighed any of the stress or any of the challenges that come with not having surface parking. So that's just something I wanted to put on the record. But
I think
agree
you're
that it's
striking
not.
fear into the hearts of some people right now with the suggestion that it would become a building, because that's exactly why the community wants it to stay R1.
But
and
it can't. But it can't. So here's the thing: I'm not striking fear. I'm future-proofing this.
Well,
I mean, I think that's and like, I get it. I mean, we don't all want tall buildings to go up around. That would have to come before the board again, right? And so doing this, or saying, you know, our opinion about parking or my philosophy around that, it doesn't say it will become that. It just says the option is open, and if Loyola decided to go into that direction, it's still not allowed. So they would have to go through this entire process again with the community. But I would just say that in general, we can't change. All that aside, I just wanted that on the record, that thought process, so that can, you know, help inform maybe future conversations with Councilman Conway. But I agree, we can't change this zoning here. It has to we have to look at it as a parking lot, or as the parcel and residential, and we can't make it become parking.
Yeah.
Let me just say, I very much appreciate those comments and that advice as well. But as Director Witt indicated, I want to put on the record that Loyola has no interest or intention to build any academic facilities on this lot.
Understood.
Yeah.
I think if the zoning district were changed to educational campus, then they could have a parking lot there by right. They could have all sorts of different uses by right. Right now, any educational facility would need conditional use approval by the board. And so that is the worry, I think, from community members why they wanted to go this route instead of the rezoning route, is because if the lot is rezoned, then there are many options that arise for Loyola. But that is, again, you're right, that's none of our business. Do you have something to add?
I should not.
So I think, do we have to vote or?
Well, I would like you to vote on the request so that we can write a resolution that is clear.
Well, I will be a no because we cannot approve. Parking lots are not approvable in the R1C district.
I am also a no.
I'm also a no.
No.
Well, just say we do appreciate everyone's time and consideration, and I personally enjoyed that trip back to law school.
Thank you so much. Now calling 25-089, 2105 Gold Street. Jennifer Boosie, Esquire, for the applicant. The project is to install a 12-foot tall fence on the property requiring variance to the balking yard regulations. First, we'll hear from planning and staff.
Okay. The request is to construct a 12-foot tall fence / wall around the perimeter of the property, requiring a variance to the minimum front yard in I-2. 10 feet is required, 0 feet is proposed. The fence would go along that front lot line. So a full 10-foot variance is needed here. Again, this is in a critical area, and so we need to talk about that. That is something that has not been consistently raised before the board, and it was brought to our attention in a different matter, and so now we've been looking at the critical area part of the zoning code and talking to the critical area planner and the planning department and realizing that this affects more cases than we realized. And so you have a memo written by Ms. Tucker that goes into some of the requirements for critical area, a variance within the critical area boundaries, I'll call them. Let's see. So it basically, it changes the variance standard from the one that we're familiar with and elevates it. So I'll leave it there for right now. And if you need to come back and get more information about critical area, I'm happy to pass the microphone to my left.
So for this appeal, planning doesn't have a formal memo or recommendation, as is typical with the fence heights. But as mentioned, we're now applying consistently the CA requirements, which require that planning finds that nothing in the critical area management plan prohibits this variance. So I just wanted to speak into the record that our coastal planner did confirm that regarding this fence height, there is nothing that prohibits that in the critical area management program. The project overall is getting a review for the CA compliance, but as far as the fence height is concerned, there's nothing in the manual that prohibits that.
Thank you. Will any of your clients be speaking today? Please stand and be sworn.
Before we start, can you pass down anything that Mr. Prettle or anybody gave you in previous cases so I can have it? Thank you.
Okay, we all good? Ready to begin? Yes.
Thank you, Chair, members of the board, Jennifer Bussey, Rosenberg Martin, here on behalf of the applicant, BGE. I have with me here today Mr. Michael Argentino, who is the project manager with BGE, and Mr. Robert Bathurst, who is a civil engineer with Kleinfelder working on the project as well. Let me start by saying that this request here today for the variance for the fence and wall is with regard to a planned substation, 2105 Gould Street. It is at the, what I'm considered to be the northeast corner of Port Covington. And this has been planned for many, many years. This planned substation is critical to the infrastructure needs of the area. It will supply electric power to the entire area, not just Port Covington, but it's part of the looped-in grid for the entire area. In addition, the property is zoned I2, and jumping right into some of the unique characteristics of the property. And we do have exhibits in the folder that can assist with with what I'm explaining here. It is I-2, but it is encompassed within the Port Covington area, which has or enjoys that PC overlay district. The total size of the lot is about 1.2 acres. An additional unique characteristic is the property's history, in addition to the typical things such as lot size and shape, which I will speak to as well. The history of the property is interesting in that going back to 1905, it was used for utility use. At that point, it started actually as generation. Now, of course, is planned for distribution as a substation, not generation. The lot is particularly situated to service the electrical needs of the area with regard to where it's located and planned. With regard to the shape and the configuration, it is unique as well as that it's bound by CSX and Macoma Street and 95, again, really at that top right corner of that peninsula. And it is currently vacant. It was used until 2019, I believe it was, for generation. And at that point, it was raised in preparation for what is now proposed. Back in 2021, time was of the essence when the adjacent property owner sought a portion of Constellation at that point's property, and subdivision occurred. However, it wasn't feasible from an engineering standpoint to fully, of course, identify the configuration of the future substation. So fast forward to here we are. We have this 1.2 acre lot. And now the engineering is complete. Within your packet is documentation of approval from the SPRC for the substation itself. There was no condition placed on that approval, and that actually did document the fence and wall. The fence and wall itself are very aesthetically pleasing as requested by the adjacent property owner. There has been a lot of communication by BGE, of course, with their external affairs department, not only to politicians, but property owners and the adjacent developer. And so again, that wall and fence is not your typical enclosure by chain link. It is a very thoughtful wall and palisade style fence to not only provide screening, but of course the really critical security for the site. You'll see in your packet some renderings. This is a really unique substation, and that is fully enclosed. It's what's called gas insulated system. And if you have any questions on the technical nature, of course, Mr. Argentino can speak to that. But there will be some external components that will, again, that's the reason for the portion of the screening being wall, to more effectively screen those external components from visual view. With regard to the specific relief, as Director Witt noted, it is both setback and encroachment. And what I wanted to note, and I did outline or make note of in my outline for you, this is a especially unique site in that what you don't see is critical, which is an underground grid. That underground grid, which is ductwork and lines, really drives, in addition, the location of the fence and wall. The fence and wall cannot be on top of really important electrical, ductwork, which drives it to the property boundary. And then with jumping into the legal variance, and Mr. Bathurst being here today, we are certainly would welcome more conversation about the critical area. He can speak directly to the approvals that have been granted and all the work that's gone into satisfying the critical area regulations. And we do appreciate the comment by planning with regard to the fact that, nothing with regard to the variance being sought relates to the critical area, meaning no additional impervious area is proposed for the wall and fence. The height and location of the fence and wall do not or are not impacted at all by the critical area. The entire lot is, as Mr. Bathurst can speak to, what is being considered and approved as part of the critical area itself. But with regard to the typical legal standard, of course, I've spoken to the unique characteristics, not only the physical characteristics, but also the history, and of course the planned use of the site to provide the electrical service for the entire area. I also do, have the opinion, of course, and would recommend that this satisfies the alternative ability to comply with your question 1B, the exceptional circumstances standard. Again, the property has been planned to provide electrical service to the area. It needs to include this proposed fence and wall, again, not only for security, but for aesthetic purposes. And it is due to the physical and engineering constraints of the property that the wall and fence cannot satisfy the setbacks. With regard to the practical difficulty, very clearly that it would be that, to apply the strict letter of the law here gives rise to the practical difficulty. Without this relief, we would not be able to actually have the substation itself, which would be precluding a use that is allowed by right in the I2 zone. The grant of variance will do actual, justice to both the property owner and the surrounding area via the distribution of reliable electricity. And the grant of the variances will be within the spirit of the zoning code and the public welfare, since safety and security is granted via the variances being approved. In addition, I would just note that the conditions on which this application are based are unique to this property. They're not generally applicable to the other properties within the same zoning classification at all. The hardship and the difficulty, again, are caused by the code, where they're not at all being created by the property owner or the applicant. It is actually the application of the code to the unique conditions of the property that are driving the need for the variances. With regard to your question 4, the purpose of the variances is not based exclusively, actually at all, on a desire to increase the value or income potential. Instead, it is to provide, again, for the substation itself and the security of the area and the screening for the area. The variances will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property. To the opposite, they will do nothing but assist, again, in the safe and reliable distribution of electric service. The variances, the grant of the variances will, of course, be in the harmony with the purpose and intent of the code, which, shall preserve and enhance the value of the structures, the communities, and the neighborhood. As again, the grant of the variances will facilitate the distribution of the safe and reliable electric service and promote the redevelopment that is planned for the area. The variances are not precluded by, will not adversely affect any urban renewal plan, the city's comprehensive master plan, or any historical and architectural preservation district. The property does not fall within the boundaries of any such plan. And, sorry about that. Finally, the variances will not otherwise be detrimental to, the grant of the variances will not otherwise be detrimental to or endanger the public health, security, general welfare, or morals, or in any way be contrary to the public interest. And, as I mentioned, with regard to the critical area, I would like to have Mr. Bathurst speak to give you some background as to what has been approved so far. I will note, though, that I'm not sure that if I heard correctly, the Director Witt made a comment, I think, that the standard is elevated. I don't know that I agree with that, but maybe we could have a conversation about it, of course. But looking at the code, Article 32, Section 7-414, the burden and standard are clearly outlined. And truly, it's the exact same standard as you are faced with every day. The only difference being that the applicant has the burden to overcome a presumption of nonconformance. And I think the testimony of Mr. Bathurst will provide for you what you need to understand that we have overcome that presumption because of the approvals that have been granted relating to the critical area. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions for me.
No.
Otherwise, we'll call Mr.
Heading,
Bathurst.
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let me go ahead and introduce Mr. Bathurst and get him to give you a little bit of information about his background so you can understand his expertise. Thank you for being here. Bob, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself and explain where you work and what your work duties are there.
Sure. Again, Bob Bathurst or Robert Bathurst. I am a civil engineer licensed in the state of Maryland. I'm Maryland local, born and raised here. I've been working professionally in the area for 35 plus years now. My duties involve permitting site development activities in the city of Baltimore and the surrounding community. On this project, I've been working with BGE for a number of years now, and that includes the subdivision of the land that predates the actual development plans that are circulating now. I'm the engineer of record for the site plan review package that has been approved by the city. Educated at Drexel University, and here I am working with some of you in the past. So this project, specifically with respect to the critical area compliance, when we're looking at stormwater compliance or critical area compliance, there's two components, and I will say that this compliance doesn't relate specifically to the wall. It's the project in totality. There was a discussion about 250 square feet, and that's the triggering amount of land disturbance that triggers critical area compliance. And of course, this is a 1.2 acre parcel, and we're disturbing every bit of it to develop it into this electrical substation. So no doubt we will have to comply with critical area stormwater related compliance as well as afforestation, which is a planting requirement. The stormwater side of the critical area compliance has to do with pollution reduction, and it's kind of an overlay to the city's stormwater management regulations. So in a redevelopment project such as we have here, the stormwater regulations require you to treat 50% of the disturbed impervious surfaces. It's slightly comparable to the critical area pollutant reduction requirements, which is a 10% reduction of pollutants pre-development to post-development. So generally speaking, if you address your stormwater compliance in the city of Baltimore for a redevelopment project such as this, you easily address them for the critical area because it's more. It's 50% for stormwater, it's 10% for critical area. Those design plans are in review with the city currently, and they're actually being processed as a revision to previously approved plans, meaning when we had the project, it was previously a building, and we wanted to raise and do any remediation that was necessary those buildings. Those plans have been approved, and the demo work has been performed, and the site now resides in this condition ready for redevelopment. And we are processing those plans as a revision to the previously approved city plans. And those were approved both by the stormwater group as well as the critical area. Now, moving on to the afforestation side. That's the need to keep plants and trees in the city of Baltimore. There is a uniqueness to electrical substations, and you can probably fathom substations aren't well understood by the general public, but one thing people understand is the need for the ability to turn on a light and it works. So substations and electrical power generation and distribution are regulated at the federal level, and consequent to that, there are lots of rules that are oriented at making sure that there is reliable power available to the public. One such policy is the right tree, right place policy that is enforced by BGE and its parent company that doesn't allow you to plant any trees within a substation. In fact, substations are generally covered in a gravel called yardstone, and the purpose of the yardstone is to function as an electrical insulation so that people, should they be standing in an electrical substation and there's an electrical short circuit, there's a insulating barrier between them and the ground so that they are not injured. So putting a tree or any other type of thing in the substation that would facilitate direct contact with the ground is just not going to be okay. And that holds true also outside the substation within a distance to the perimeter. And generally speaking, the starting point is 10 feet. So there can't be any vegetation or woods or trees within 10 feet of the perimeter of the substation for the same reasons. What that generally means to us is when we're doing permitting for a substation, planting trees, which is usually related to the landscape ordinance for the city of Baltimore, or whether it's compliance with the critical area afforestation obligations. We are precluded from doing that at a substation, right? Because it would interfere with the delivery of that reliable power. So how we address that on every substation project is by paying a fee for those plantings so that Tree Baltimore and other entities can plant in a more appropriate location where the public can more benefit from those. So afforestation obligations for critical area are paid or are addressed through a critical area fee in lieu. So that's how the project in total addresses critical area compliance.
Thank you. And can you summarize again where you are in that process of getting those approvals?
So the groundwork is laid, if you will, because the critical area review initiated at the subdivision stage, right? They look at critical area is triggered through subdivision. So there was an initial look then, and then of course when we did the MO project, which was permitted, and now at the SPRC stage under the current substation, it was looked at then, and now we're at the point where they're reviewing the stormwater and critical area plans and computations. That's where we're at right now.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I would have for the witness.
Mr. Chair, if I can just interrupt one question. Could you spell your name?
BATHURST.
Any other questions from them?
Just kind of procedural, so I think you might have a perspective, but we might, basically, I'm trying to understand, one of the things that happens quite often is folks will come before us for a variance when there are concurrent reviews happening. And so what I'm trying to understand is if we were to grant the variance today, that doesn't necessarily, like, if you don't get approved through site plan review or critical area review, that takes precedence over any variance related to fence height. Does that sound right to you guys?
So I could have the witness speak to that if that helps.
Yes, I was like, somebody here will be able to speak to that.
And just to
Thank
back up, no, it's okay, turn it back on. If you could reiterate where we are with regard to SBRC approval and then what you expect going forward.
So the site plan review committee package or plans, I believe may have been provided as
Just one of the
exhibits. So those plans do show the position of the screening wall and fence. And if I were to have removed those features off the plans, or for that matter, lowered their height, we wouldn't even be here today. So it's strictly the height of the wall and fence that drive our need to be here today. So the environmental permitting components that you're alluding to, if I were to have just simply said 3.5 feet on all those features, we wouldn't be here today, and those plans would still be subject to those same environmental regulations, and I would still be obligated to show compliance, and the city would, of course, review and hopefully concur with the approach and the permit.
And just to reiterate, because I think this is important for us just to get on the record, the fence height and the wall height are specific safety specifications related to the substation. These are not specifications that you all created on your own for any sort of desire. The appropriate way to build a substation requires this type of security, this type of fencing, and you would not be approved if the fencing were shorter.
Absolutely. Very good questions. I didn't get into the details, but Mr. Argentino, who did take the time to be here today, I'll let him have a moment in the sun. If you could just give a little more information about the wall and the fence itself.
Yeah, so they're standard across the board per substation, and we tier our substations accordingly. So, and we have to have a minimum height and requirements to prevent scaling the fence. And there's also security requirements inside with cameras and other various security features.
And then the design has been dictated by the neighbor, essentially. So like you're
Correct.
kind of going above and beyond, maybe design-wise, because of MAG Partners' requirement to shield the substation from their current development.
So this particular style fence, as shown in one of the renderings, has been the most well-received from all our adjacent customers, the Palisade style fence.
Okay.
And they are in agreement with the fence, and we went at great lengths with the building aesthetics as well.
Okay.
I'll actually extend a question on that, specifically as the aesthetics, just out of kind of curiosity, if anything else. But the reason that you actually transitioned from one more transparent fence to opaque fence, does that have anything to do with the substation program itself, or what's the reason?
Yes, if you look at one of the aerial shots, you'll see these white walls that are attached to the building. There'll be 3 bays inside of those walls where the transformers are actually located, and we would prefer if no one could see or have line of sight of those pieces of those assets.
And just to correct, he's speaking about Exhibit 9, the rendering, not the aerial.
Right,
'Cause-
right,
yeah,
right.
Okay.
I have no further questions.
Nor do I.
Based upon what you presented today and the testimony presented today, I'm inclined. I think I'm going to vote in favor of granting a variance for the minimum front yard requirements in the I-2 zoning district. There are both unique and exceptional circumstances at play here. Unique circumstances are that this is a property that has historically been used as a coal generating facility that is now going to be redeveloped into a substation for electrical supply that will fuel the South Baltimore Peninsula and adjacent areas. It's also exceptional because the electrical service is sorely needed in this fast-growing area, this developed area in South Baltimore. If the strict letter of the law was to apply, then it would if we were to apply the strict letter of the law of the zoning code to this property, then there would not be able to have that front fence area, which can pose a danger to the safety of surrounding property owners and surrounding residents and visitors to the area. It is not, strictly out of a desire to increase the value of the property. This is not a self-imposed harm by the applicant. It is not injurious to use and enjoyment of surrounding property. In fact, surrounding neighbors are in favor of building this 12-foot wall or fence in order to shield the substation and to protect the safety of others around the area. And does not pose a threat to the public safety. In fact, it helps prevent dangerous accidents from occurring. And so for those reasons, I vote yes for the variance, for the minimum front yard variance.
So a yes.
I'd just like a little clarity on this issue is how it relates to the statement about the critical area, where it says something about non-water dependent structures. That basically means you're not affecting the waterways. I think I heard you say something to that effect.
Water-dependent use would be like a marina. So obviously, the electrical substation isn't any use that would be oriented towards
That's
water.
right, that's unneeded, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a yes.
And I'm also yes.
If I may, I would request for the record that the board make a finding in accordance with Section 7-414C like cat 4, where it says that the board must make a written finding as to whether, based on competent and substantial evidence, the applicant has overcome the presumption which is identified in C1, I believe it is, if I'm correct, C1 or C2. Essentially that when you look at 7-414, it identifies the fact that the presumption is that you don't satisfy, or the applicant does not satisfy as it states out, the State Natural Resources Article, Title 8, COMART, and the Critical Area Management Program, which is why, again, the testimony of Mr. Bathurst was so critical to explain that we have overcome that presumption since we have and will continue to satisfy the critical area regulations.
So yeah, I do want to make sure that I have accepted the testimony that presumption of nonconformity has been rebutted. You guys have met your burden of proof on that front.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay.
Off the record at 3:11.
Thank you.
Now calling, where are we at? Case 25-093, 1922 West Pratt Street, Coleman Ejenwa is the applicant. The project is to use the property as a healthcare clinic requiring conditional use approval.
All right, I don't have a ton to offer in terms of background. Other than that, it's a healthcare clinic in C1. It's exempt from parking because it's in C1. And I do believe that there are people here in opposition. So I just wanted to highlight that for the board in case you want to. In case you want to call everyone and get everyone sworn at once.
If there's anybody here in opposition to this case that wants to testify today, please come up and stand to be sworn. You may have a seat here. When it's your turn to speak, I will let you know. Make sure that your microphone is green when you plan to speak.
You swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and the statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. First, we'll hear from staff and planning.
I already did my part.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we understand this is a conditional use for a healthcare clinic. They're proposing to provide primary care and a large deal of telehealth services. We see no reason why it would be more impactful at this site than any other similarly zoned location. So planning recommends approval of the appeal.
Okay. Sir, tell us about your healthcare clinic.
Okay, my name is Coleman Ejenwa, Ejenwa. I'm a nurse practitioner by profession, and I'm on my way to getting my doctoral degree by October if everything works well. I started a quick care clinic right off of Howard, Baltimore County. We registered that company in 2020 and then opened our first door in 2021 right through the COVID. So throughout the whole time, we provided COVID tests, flu vaccines. We do sports physical for children, especially this time. We provide chronic care management for patients with diabetes and all of that. And we also provide mental health, telehealth visits, 95% of our patients. We also do weight management. We do surgical, pre-surgery clearances for patients and so on. So we have a lease that's expiring in October. We saw this property on 1922 West Pratt Street. It was sold to us through an auction somewhere, I think, 16th or 17th of May. We bought it, and of course, we knew it was a conditional use. We asked the zoning how long would it take to go through a hearing and everything they explained to us. So here we apply, and here we are here today. To give you a little background from what I know about this building, It looks like it's been vacant for some time. The seller was using it for either a storage, what they told us. They own restaurants, they were using it for storage. And there's a lot to do in it. There's no water right now there. When we call for BG&E for electricity, they say, oh, there's electricity there, but it's not recorded. So we have electricity there in our name right now. We are asking the city to approve us to use it for basically healthcare services, nothing else. We are open 10 to 5. Nobody sleeps there. Nobody's going to be sleeping there. So that's all.
Will you be prescribing any medication at this clinic?
We will not be dispensing any medication, but we'll be prescribing. We have been prescribing medication.
But no dispensing on site?
No dispensing on site.
Okay. Could you give me a bit more about your history as a practitioner? What other sort of healthcare clinics have you either managed or operated?
Okay. First of all, when I became a nurse practitioner, I started working with CVS Mini Clinic. That's where I got my idea. Vaccines, flu, ticks, pregnancy tests, and all of that, vaccines and all that. So right now, I work Monday through Friday, but 3-4 days from 12 to 5 in my office. We have my secretary and some other staff come in at 10. On weekends, I see patients in 2 nursing homes in Ellicott City and here in Baltimore City. And on Tuesday, like this time, if not for here, I would have been in DC to see patients in assisted living over there in DC. Majority of patients that we see for things like bipolar, anxiety, and depression, they don't come to us. It's telehealth. Primary care, they come to us because we want to get their vital signs and stuff like that. And other patients, we see them outside. Basically 80% of our activities are done outside our clinic.
Have you met with members of the community about your proposed healthcare clinic?
When we got the place in May, I tried to reach out to the store owners in the area because the area has about 80% of stores and homes there are boarded, no activities going on. So I met one of the persons that sells things on the side and a few of them. I asked them if there's a community association. They said no. In fact, what they told me that we wish there's one. That's what all of them told me, that they need one. So luckily, when I got a message, an email on the 13th from somebody from the planning called Justin, and he requested that to clarify a little more. I sent him an email, and he told me also that he gave me 3 email addresses of people in the community. I reached out to all 3 of them. Luckily, one of them responded immediately. One responded later and said he'd be on vacation. So one of them was Miss Cynthia. She told me that there was a community association meeting as of yesterday, which means 6 p.m. yesterday, the 18th. I told her I'll be there, and I was there yesterday, and I met them. I told them exactly my intention, and I also saw my neighbor because the unit I bought is 1922, and they are occupying 1920. And besides, the first week when I bought the building, I pressed on their button to introduce myself to them and tell them who I am. Nobody opened the door. Luckily, one of the days I saw them. I saw the man first. I tried to explain myself to him. I'm your new neighbor. Can I have your number? He gave me his number. And then I sent him a message. I told him, well, I'm your new neighbor. I want to know you. Basically, I want to be a good neighbor. If there's anything, basically, I sent him a very nice, decent, I would say accommodating message. And he responded. So later on, also saw the wife one day. And then as I also greeted her and told her, here I am. So if there's anything, I like to be a very good neighbor Because if you have a good neighbor, then you have no problem. So last night they came to the association, and that's the first time I found out that they say they oppose what I want to do. So I don't know.
Any other questions before we ask the opposition? Any questions?
No questions.
No questions.
Please, why are you here today?
Yes, hello. My name is Patrice Bembo.
But first, spell your name.
Yes, PATRICEBENBOW. Were you spelling your name?
Yes, so my name is Dwayne Mark Bembo Jr., DWAYNE, last name BENBOW. And
Yes, I just initially wanted to say that as a healthcare clinician, for one, we own the property, 1920 West Pratt. We understand that and know that a lot of facilities that come into certain areas and proclaim to be healthcare related, the communities are saturated with certain PRPs, healthcare clinics, as they call them, and they seem to be very oversaturated with transient people, whereas they're sleeping outside, certain vagrants, drugs, things of that nature. We've had many issues with that because there are those facilities on that block already where we've seen a lot of that traffic. When we met the gentleman across from me yesterday at the community association meeting, the community didn't seem so welcoming to that in the area as well. They wanted more information. The gentleman stated across from me that he did prescribe medication, spoke about prescribing pain medication, very familiar with once you do prescribe that, they will tell others, they will come by the truckloads, and we will have a lot of that sort of those transient people in the neighborhoods from that. Once they know that there is a clinic in another one in the area, it just is not going to be good for what we are trying to build in the neighborhood. A good family businesses, there are residential there as well. So we're trying to build this community up without those type of elements in the neighborhood, as we are community workers and advocates as well.
yes, and I just wanted to just piggyback off of what she stated. I did a little. Okay, I did a little research because I wanted to find out who is going to be beside me. So I did some research on K-Search, and I was able to discover quite a few just different type of charges. One that stuck out the most was a total of like 4 different foreclosures, all in a matter of like 10 years. That was one thing that had spoke out to me. And another thing that has spoke out was I saw 2 tort cases. And tort cases are typically lawsuits of foul play. It was a lawsuit filed against him a few years ago for about like $15,000. Not sure what transpired in that lawsuit. And another thing that I had also researched, like I did research on all the specifics. So I looked at the owner, I looked at who owned the LLC, and I also looked over the articles of organization. And on the articles of organization, it states that the resident agent is a lady by the name of Lavette Dobson. If you Google Levette Dobson, this is a scam. This is a fraud account. It's a fraud person that has been doing this in over 72,000 different cases and filings throughout the whole United States of America. And I saw that. And another thing that I also saw was the LLC that has been used over and over. It's called Republic Registered Agent LLC. If you look that up, it immediately tells you they act as an official point of contact for businesses, specifically LLCs and corporations, to receive legal and official documents from the state. So I pretty much had just did my research about all the specifics, and this is an official Maryland state document. Articles of organization, you must file proper documents on it. And if you look at the resident agent, it's all fraud. And I just wanted to kind of do my research on my neighbor, someone that is trying to come into the community. And I was able to find this information, this public record. You can look over the articles of incorporation yourself. The name is and I'm an advocate for the Carrollton Reds. I'm a part of the 40th District State Central Committee. So I run and I protect my community. So this is me attempting to continue to make sure that the community is safe. The name that I'm speaking about, I want to spell it out. It's Loveette, last name Dobson, Dobson. If you Google this name, it will be red flags on everything pertaining to this name. You'll see hundreds of people talking about it on TikTok, hundreds of people talking about it on Facebook, on Instagram. It's over, like this name had did a total of like 40,000 registries in like the fourth quarter of like 2020, I think 2021. So it's just a history of just bad blood, and this is what we don't want in our community. So I wanted to make sure that I was here, just like I made sure I was at the meeting last night. And the stuff that I'm speaking about it's not my opinion. I don't want to come in here and give opinions. I want to come in here and give facts, give stuff that can be proven. So I just wanted to speak about those specific issues with this gentleman attempting to put something in our community. So I just and if you look at another thing about the tort case, I just wanted to write what is a tort case. A tort is a civil wrong that causes a harm to another person, leading to legal liability for the person who committed the wrong. In instance, a tort case is a lawsuit where one party, plaintiff, seeks compensation for damages caused by another party, defendant. So I just wanted to just speak about the specifics. I know that this is on record. And again, my name is Dwayne Mark Bimbo Jr., and this is my wife. And if you have any questions, I just wanted to make sure that I was very specific. We've been here waiting patiently for the last 2.5 hours to be here, and that's it.
Yes.
I want to go back just really quickly. It's not uncommon for a registered agent to have a bunch of different businesses because they offer like a private service, right? So that you can have them on your articles of incorporation, and sometimes it's best practice to not have somebody within the organization, but especially if you're a small business, have somebody keeping up with when things need to be filed. So the amount of businesses I can't speak to, but like besides the amount of businesses, because that could just be a company that has a bunch of registered agents that people, like a specific service, right? What was the thing that you said was suspicious about her?
No, it's not a her. It's a fictitious person. Like if you look at Google and you literally type the name in, it's gonna immediately just show you all the just different states in the Google search. And and down to the LLC. If you type in the name of the LLC that's on there, it'll just show you just fraud page by page on Google of just fraud and people having issues with this person and not knowing who this person is. And this is just not in the state of Maryland. It's not just a Maryland thing. It's Delaware, it's Texas. If you text the address in that's associated with, that's also on it, you'll see just from the search. If you search that address out, it pops up as fraud. So it's 3 different things that can be searched out. And we search out the address is Texas address, which is 17350 State Highway 249, number 220, Houston, Texas 77064. You just Google that by itself, fraud. You Google the name by itself, the personal private name, fraud. Google the LLC by itself, fraud. So these are 3 specific things that was searched out, and it all ties into it being completely fraud. And I'm not sure what he can speak on, but all that I'm saying is with this official document, because I had to file the same articles of incorporation. I'm very familiar with the responsibilities of the resident agent, who they are, and the purpose of the resident agent. Like you were speaking about as far as the consistency with documents being filed. But it's like the address is bad, the address is linking it in and saying fraud, the name is saying fraud, and the LLC is saying fraud. Okay. So those are like just 3 major red flags that just stood out the most.
Thanks for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Do you have any other questions related to the healthcare clinic use itself?
Yes, and as we were just speaking about, we're on a 1900 block. It's a total of like 2 other healthcare clinics, and they have high traffic of people sleeping out front before they open. The wording on the building, it will say that they're servicing to this, but is if they're open from whatever hours, they have people outside waiting, stealing stuff. Our vehicles have been vandalized. It's just been a major issue. We've been there for a total of 5 years. So I'm just speaking about just what those clinics have produced on the block in general, and just the negligence.
Yes, and in my experience, what I know to be true is all you need is to be able to take someone's blood pressure, to put an ICD-9 code to submit for billing, and you can prescribe, you can send them on their way. It's going to be an extreme high traffic transient area, which is very scary. We've had a lot of theft. We've had a lot of vandalism. It just is extremely extensive. And that's why we work with the community to work with other organizations and entities to build it up so that it is a nice place for people to be.
Can I say something, though?
You'll get the last word, sir, but I just want to make sure that I've given them an opportunity to.
Yes, that's like the core focus of everything. Yes, that's everything. That's the urgency, and yes.
Okay, thank you for coming today,
everyone, chairman, person,
sir.
everyone.
You've heard the opposition today. Namely, they've had a bit to say about the formation of your entity. Can you just tell us more about the formation of your company and the entity to clear that up if you can?
Okay, first of all, I don't know the entities that they say. You have a computer, you can Google Quick Care Clinic, Inc. You can see I'm the sole proprietor. I'm the only resident agent. Nobody affiliated to me. I have not had any DEA, meaning Federal Government Drug and Enforcement Agency, knock on my door, never. If you Google us, we have 5-star rating. Basically, Lovette or Loretta, whatever, I don't know. This building was, I don't know who they Google. I don't know whether they know my name before they can Google me. I believe, I don't know you, I cannot Google you. At least I have to have my name, have the name of my company. I've been in America for 25 years. Within these 25 years, I have 4 kids, all doing well in school. The only thing that you can go and see my record is divorce, which is not a crime.
All right, we're here for a healthcare clinic.
Yeah,
So
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Let's
so
focus on the healthcare clinic.
when you say you Google me, I don't know, but my healthcare clinic is doing so well in the state of Maryland. So well, we are seeing patients in a nursing home. We are seeing patients in assisted living in DC. We are seeing patients in a very high class assisted living / nursing home in Ellicott City. I just don't want to say the name because, but if you want to, I will tell you Future Care, Lorien. These are the areas we see patients. We have no single problem with what they are talking about. I understand their fear, which is good. They live next door, just one wall, 1920. I'm there 1922. I'm going to come and go, and they live there. I understand their fear, but their fear shouldn't deprive me from rendering care to the community. So where their right stops is where mine starts. If I'm a bad person, I don't have to reach out to them. I don't have to reach out to them. I'm the one that reach out to them. If you want, I can read the first text message I sent to them and the second one. If I'm that kind of trouble person, like I told them last time, if the community say, don't do this, fine. I can oppose the community. But from what they said, I don't think what the community said last time, they did not welcome it. They made it look like I'm going to prescribe pain medication. I have the right credentials to prescribe pain medication, but we don't do that. It's just like you have a medical degree, you can choose to be a surgeon, you can choose to be a GI. People are doing pain clinic. I'm not doing pain clinic. So I don't know. They're afraid, I understand, but I can guarantee them that you have nothing to worry about. You have my number. You can call me and talk to me if anything. So my goal is to continue where they started, to also help the community come up. That's all.
Any other questions?
No questions.
I have a question. What is the name of your business, sir?
Quick Care Clinic, Inc.
Thank you.
And Quick Care Clinic USA LLC, 2 sister companies.
Okay, we see these a lot about healthcare clinics along, all throughout our city. We often have residents and neighbors who express, concern and fear about activity that often comes along with these healthcare clinics. The zoning code is very clear what the standards are for conditional use. And so what we have to find, some negative effects are presumed. That's why the use is conditional, why you have to ask permission. We have to find that those negative effects for your proposed use will be above and beyond the expected negative effects of a healthcare clinic in the zoning district. So what I've heard today, I haven't heard anything that sort of rebuts that presumption that the negative effects of having a healthcare clinic here will be above and beyond what we can usually expect for a healthcare clinic within the C1 district. And for that reason, I am a yes for the approval of the conditional use.
I also vote yes. I think a lot of times in cases such as this one, neighbors who are fearful of something new coming to their neighborhood have probably over-researched what they're looking for. The best research they can get is a relationship with the person next door, which is you. And in time, it will show who's right and who's wrong. So I know what he's done in looking up the names. I used to do it every day. It was part of the job that I had when I was with the state government in small business. You had to go research people through the websites and find out where they real or where they're not. So I can understand what you're doing. Keep doing it. But this gentleman was not the person that you were researching. His business is not attached to the names that you were researching. And that's how things start. And I just want to say that on record.
Thanks, Mr. Clark. I'll echo Mr. Clark's concern about creating a relationship with adjacent neighbors and especially building a community, because that is what a community is about. It's about creating relationships with your neighbors and continuing to grow your community together. I also agree with Chair and his statements of approval for the conditional use, and I am also a yes for this. Thanks.
I think I just want to completely respect the time that you came today, the interest in your community, the concerns that you shared. I think very often we see people coming to get approval for healthcare clinics that are going to do one thing and one thing only. I think time will prove out, based on what we heard today, that if somebody's coming to me and saying they want healthcare approval because they're going to do things like, sports physicals and, all these variety of healthcare needs rather than just deal with substance abuse, I think that's interesting to me and makes me curious. And so I think from a community perspective, the curiosity that led you to do really, serious research, I would just say keeping curious and let this prove out, and hopefully everything is better than what we imagined it would be. And then, of course, if it's not, there's avenues to pursue. But from a zoning perspective, like the chair said, right now, based on the information presented, we can't demonstrate that it would be worse outcomes than any other location within this zoning district. So for that reason, I'm a yes.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming today. So the prize winner, last case of the day, now calling 25-106, 7201 Park Heights Avenue. Dino La Fiandra is for the applicant.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
The project is to use the property as a place of worship with accessory community center, requiring conditional use of parking variance and variance to bulk regulations.
Thank you.
First, we will hear from planning and staff.
All right, so one or possibly two conditional uses are being requested here, depending on how the board sees it. Place of worship and community center. Whether that is a separate use or an accessory use is up to the applicant and the board to figure out. And then variances, one for off-street parking. This was complicated because there's more than one use. And so we think, let's see here, that there's 93 spaces required, 49 spaces provided, 44 space variance. Off-street park, that's for the place of worship. For the community center, 75 spaces would be required, 49 are provided, so 26 space variance. Altogether, I guess, 168 spaces would be required, 49 spaces are provided, so 119 space variance for both uses together. Long-term bicycle parking, 2 spaces would be required, 0 have been proposed, so it'd be a full variance of 2 bicycle parking long-term spaces. Impervious surface, 40% is allowed, 63% is proposed to be a 23% variance, and maximum building height, 35 feet is allowed, 43 feet is proposed to be an 8-foot variance. You have all the definitions in your notes about place of worship, community center, accessory use. And I think that's it from me.
So regarding 7201 Park Heights Avenue. To start with the conditional uses, the planning recommends approval of both the place of worship and the community center. Again, no reason to believe why they would be more impactful at this site than any other. Regarding the variances for off-street parking and impervious services, planning does recommend approval of those appeals as well, as given the constraints of the lot, they are reasonable. The only variance request we're not recommending approval for is the bicycle parking. We understand the applicants stated that the tenets of the religious service prohibit using a bicycle to arrive at the service, but as there's also a community center proposed, which will draw in youth during different hours. And just as a practical matter, there's only 2 spaces proposed for bicycles, and it is a gross floor area of 26,000 square feet. We think that the 2 long-term spaces could be provided on site. So again, planning recommends approval of both conditional uses and all variances with the exception of the off-street bicycle parking.
Thank you. So before any testimony today, if anybody's going to speak, I ask that you stand and be sworn. And
Do you swear or affirm under the penalty of perjury that the answers that you give and statements that you make will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Yes. And when you speak, if you could remember to state and then spell your full name.
Mr. Chair, Dino LaFiandra, I represent Abbas Haim in this matter. May I hand out our exhibits?
Sure.
There you go. There you are. The board up there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
So Ahavas Haim is a Orthodox Jewish congregation in Northwest Baltimore. They own the property at 7201 Park Heights Avenue, which is in the R1E zone. It is 1.39 acres. It originated, it was, I think, 3 lots earlier, and it went through lot consolidation earlier this year. 2 lots. And it went through lot consolidation earlier this year, and it was approved on February 4th, 2025. It also went, this project went to the SPRC in April 22nd, 2025, and it has also received design review. The proposed use is a house of worship. The reason it is phrased the way it is in the material is because it's really a multi-dimensional house of worship. There are a number of different facets of the programs that will be discussed today. And but looking at the definition of house of worship, which I think you have, I have that. You'll find that a place of worship means a building together with accessory buildings and uses where individuals regularly assemble for religious purposes and related social events. And it includes accessory programs that provide care for children or elderly or functionally impaired adults. Of course, under the zoning regulations, it might also include other accessory programs or other accessory dimensions or aspects of the use as well. I have with me 2 representatives from Ahavas Haim. I have Reuven Goodman, who's the president of Ahavas Haim. I have Adam Kosh right over here, who's a board member. And they will be telling you about the congregation and the anticipated programs that will be in the building that we will be discussing. I wanted to take a moment to clarify the parking because really on what can only be described as the eve of this hearing, we discovered that the parking calculation that was reflected in the worksheet that was submitted to the board was was dramatically incorrect. And by that, I mean, on the material that I just handed out, at the top left of the first page, you'll see the correct parking worksheet. And I would like to just take a moment to walk through this. Since this is a house of worship, a place of worship, the parking is determined by looking at the fire-rated capacity of the main sanctuary. And the main sanctuary, which we will discuss, and it's shown on the first sheet of this exhibit, is shown in this kind of peach color. It's 2,126 square feet, and it has a fire-rated capacity under the International Building Code of 142 occupants. This, because Avos Chaim is a Orthodox Jewish congregation, you'll learn that they, because of their religious tenets, they don't drive to services on Shabbat. And under the zoning code, when you have that situation, we are required to park at 1 space per 8 fire-rated capacity, which yields a total parking requirement for this project of 18 parking spaces. We have 49 parking spaces that are provided. So, you'll agree, I believe you'll agree with me after you hear the testimony from the representatives from the congregation that the accessory programs that are involved in this particular congregation all fall within the definition of place of worship under the code. And for that reason, we believe that the parking requirement under the code is 18, and it's obviously more than adequately satisfied with the 49 parking spaces. Moving on, and we'll get to this in the course of the examination of the witnesses, but we also need a variance for impervious surface coverage. We've got 63% impervious surface. We are in the R1E zone, which typically only permits a impervious surface of 40%. So we've got 63%, and you'll hear from the engineer about why that is and how that came to be. The building height we will address. We just want to address the fact that the height of the building is 31 feet and 8 inches, which is to the top of the roof deck, and the projections that are above that elevation are permitted extensions of that height, and for that reason, they don't count towards the actual height. We'll get into that when we get to that. As it relates to the long-term bike parking, it's really just a space limitation inside the building itself. We do provide the short-term bike parking outside, but inside the building for the long-term parking, it presented some practical difficulties based on the architecture of the building and some other features which you'll hear about. So ultimately, we're confident that you will find that we meet the approval standards for both the conditional use and the now 2 variances that we need for this project. So unless you have any questions for me, I'd like you to hear from the representatives of Avos Chaim.
Any questions?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Mr. Goodman, if you would, or Ms. Kosh, can you tell us about Avos Chaim and what it is and what your program is here?
Awesome. First, sure. Adam Kosh, Khosh. I first want to appreciate everyone's time here. I know we're the last case, so appreciate it. I know everyone's running out of patience, so thank you again. So Avos Chaim is a synagogue, but we kind of it's a multi-blend where it's teens at risk and also older people, everyone in one area. And the teens that we go ahead and that benefit from the synagogue we bring faith and religion to them, and we also help teens they're teens that are at risk. So our goal is to go ahead and help them and help them be a good part of society and to grow as people.
And as a synagogue, is there a resident rabbi?
Yes.
And do you regularly have services?
Yes.
And as it relates to the programs that serve the teens at risk, how many teens are we talking about?
On average, I would say between 70 to 120 average.
Okay. And how many congregants do you have for your synagogue?
For our actual synagogue, we have about, I would say, 70 to 90 congregants right now.
Okay. And just for the record, your congregation of Orthodox Jews, can you just describe very briefly what the restrictions are on driving to services?
Correct. The restrictions are on Saturday, so Friday night at sundown till Saturday night till 3 stars come out. We can't drive or have anything that's electronic. So typically we walk to synagogue. We cannot bike. And yeah, that's typically that. And also high holidays, we would have to do the same.
Okay. And did you have an opportunity to meet with the community about this project?
Great question. So we did. Obviously, a building of this status going up at that prominent corner, we went ahead, we reached out to many community members, and thank God, looking behind us, there's no one here besides one individual who's with us, 2 individuals who are with us. But thank God we got full-on community support from everyone in the community for this.
And I don't actually have extra copies of this, but did you, Ms. Witt, receive a letter from the Cheswold Neighborhood Association in this particular case?
I don't believe so. So can you, you can
Sure.
hand it up.
May
to the
I?
board.
May I? I apologize. It's my only copy,
No
but
problem.
I'm happy to turn it over. And you met with the Cheswold, cross-country Cheswold?
Correct. We met with Cheswold, the community association. We met with surrounding property owners as well, homeowners. Correct. We informed everyone. We made everyone aware of what's happening, additional to the signage that went up at the property. So we did have people come. We did go ahead and have a discussion, and we were able to go ahead and get that endorsement letter.
And did you just meet today with representatives of the Park West Condominium Association directly across the street?
Yes.
Were you able to reach an agreement with them on their support?
Yes.
And did they were here earlier, and they're no longer here?
Correct.
Okay. And did you achieved an agreement for them to support this project?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have anything else that you wanted to tell the board about your program?
No, I just appreciate everyone again, and hopefully we could go ahead and have this dealt with.
Okay. So
I'd like to just drill down.
Yes, of course.
Same.
On how is the community center accessory to the house of worship? So how do they relate to each other so that they can be seen as,
Legitimately accessory.
Yeah.
Yes. Could you tell us more about how, or perhaps you would?
Hi, good question. My name is Reuven Goodman. So basically, the concept of this specific synagogue is that we realized that a lot of the teenagers in town were not really connecting to the religions. They were just kind of lost and had a lot of problems. So the whole concept of this synagogue is that we have our core members who are extremely welcoming and understanding and kind of mentoring to them. So therefore, when we, in our synagogue, when we have these teens come in, right, I'm an adult. It's hard to sit through services for so many hours, right? Don't tell my parents. Also, so what happens in those scenarios is that we have these kids come in and they need space around. Maybe they go play basketball outside a little bit and come back in, or things for them. It's all really for them. So, for instance, we have the teen center we'll have a game room upstairs and this and that. So they just feel comfortable and don't feel constrained and don't think that this is what it means. So therefore. This is why exactly it's a synagogue with all these accessories in order to really instill love and understanding and give space, because a lot of these kids do come from very broken homes, and just to have them come into regular synagogue wouldn't work, and we want to show them our love through those means.
Could you also, if you would, tell us how more about the programs that and who runs them? What is the engagement between the synagogue aspect of things and the teen center aspect of things?
So it's run by Rabbi Cohn, Rabbi Cohen is an unbelievable, most selfless human being who pretty much started this whole thing just by, just being him. And so what he does is, again, he runs all kinds of programs because there's different age groups, maybe 14, 16 years old, 16, 18-year-old. So what he does is he, after the synagogue, gets them involved in lots of life learning skills as well through the synagogue programs. For instance, they may speak with mental health provider there. They may learn to help them find a job, just everything ancillary to get them in a mentally stable place. And he's Rabbi Cohen and Rabbi Berman behind me. They really take the lead on that, and really this synagogue completely addresses a very, very neglected part of our community.
So I think one of the things that there's sort of two ways that we can look at accessory. So we can look at use and we can look at square footage. And so I think one of the things that stuck out to me is when you say, how many youth do you serve on average? 70 to 120. How many congregates do you have? 70 to 90. Then it becomes less of a synagogue and more of a youth recreation center. So I just wanted to point that out for the board as we're looking to consider what is accessory. And without looking at the dimensions, I think that to me is a little less important in terms of the space that would be considered the community center versus the church. But I think that's just one thing we just should agree on and clear as we approve both of the uses, because I think that's the question at hand, correct, Ms. Witt, is like, are we looking at them together or are we looking at them separate? And if we're looking at them together, one has to become the accessory use to the other. If we're looking at them separate, if we can't make that determination, then we need to make approvals for both uses.
And if I may, I think that's why we asked for it the way that we did, which was place of worship with accessory community center.
Right, and so what
Yeah.
I'm saying is that when you serve more people in the community center than you do in the church, is the community center is not accessory to
Yeah.
the place of worship.
So I think to give the lawyerly perspective on that, I think the primary function of the building itself is a place of worship, and secondarily, it serves as a center for primarily teens at risk. But I do think that is a secondary aspect of the primary principal use, so to speak. And I understand what you're saying about both square footage and uses, or however you put it earlier. But which is why we put it the way that we did when we asked for it, which was a place of worship with accessory community center, because that seemed to be the closest match to. But I understand, and I would hope that if you felt that we needed a separate conditional use approval for community center, that you would consider that as well.
Yeah, and I guess I just want to ask the board, is there, just so that I understand the question I'm looking to answer, for our perspective, in order to allow them to move forward with this project, they either need approval for both, or they just need approval for place of worship with accessory to community center.
Yeah.
But practically, either way that we grant approval will not be a barrier to them doing what's on the page.
No, I don't.
Right, so I think that's.
Yeah. Either way, they would have to meet the conditional use standard. So, right. So it won't be so how they mix them won't be the barrier that will prevent them from it,
Right.
because we would still have to make the same determination.
So we just have to put that on the record, though,
Yeah.
what we decide to do, and then.
Yes, and it also impacts the amount of parking.
The parking is the thing.
Right.
So when I've been looking at this, and community centers, youth centers are often incidental to religious purposes. Most religious organizations or houses of worship across the city, don't just say, hey, one day out the week we're going to invite people in and then shut the doors to the rest of the community for other days. It's very common to see other sort of religious entities across the city find more ways to bring in the community and those surrounding them. So I can see how it could be incidental. Of course, I think your testimony that the youth programming will be managed by the church, by the I'm sorry, synagogue, and the parishioners. Is that even? Can I say parishioners? Okay, and its parishioners. Helps me see this more as being something that's incidental to the house of worship. It is part of sort of the piety of the members, is they see this as part of their duty as Orthodox Jewish people. And so I'm inclined to see this as something that's customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use of as a house of worship. That's I'm comfortable making that for me voting that way. How about everybody else?
I couldn't have said it better.
Yeah,
I
no,
agree.
I agree. And I mean, I think in practice, I think less parking, more programming for building and recreation is better. So I think that's sort of, I just wanted to make sure what questions I needed to answer. That was where the clarity for me was. So regardless of how we end up classifying the use, I'm comfortable with the parking exemption in both scenarios.
Okay.
Including the third that you presented, which it could be a
Separate.
lot less than the formula.
Yeah.
So either scenario for me, I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. So let's tackle this conditional use. Sure. And then we can get to the whatever variances may or may not be needed.
I'm sorry, were there opponents here previously and they
We had
left?
some folks that were present. We
Okay.
weren't sure whether they were going to oppose us or not, but we engaged with them.
Okay.
They're not these people.
They are not here.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we weren't missing some opposition. Okay.
Listening to the testimony of the applicants, their materials presented to us both before the hearing and today at the hearing, I'm inclined to believe that this is to approve a conditional use as a house of worship with an accessory community center use. I do not believe that placing this that these two uses, the principal and accessory use, at this location will bring negative effects that are above and beyond what we could expect at any other location within the zoning district. So for that reason, I am a yes to approving the principal conditional use and the accessory conditional use.
I am a yes to the conditional use as the chair presented.
Yes.
And I am also a yes.
So you're finding it as a separate accessory use, or that it falls under the definition of place of worship as an accessory to?
It falls under the definition of a plus of house of worship, and as this is accessory use to a
Thank
house
you.
of worship. Yes.
Wonderful. So if I may, I'd like to move on to a discussion of the exhibits that I handed out. Starting with the first page, I'm going to ask Becky Kent and Robert Charles, who are the architects involved with the project. Ms. Kent, if you would take a moment, just with regard to sheet C1, which is the first sheet here, perhaps you could walk us through this architectural site plan, and then we can also discuss some of the other exhibits as we get to them, in particular the renderings.
Sure, absolutely. Thank you. Rebecca Kent, REB CCA, KENT, Principal Architect, Levin Brown Associates Architects. What you have here is a floor plan rendering that includes the site, first floor, that shows the 7-mile lane and Park Heights Avenue corner. It shows specifically how this site has been carefully designed in cooperation with CMR, with Ms. Bria Burke, to be a really pedestrian-friendly site. We account for the fact that most of the people coming to this site, whether they're elderly or young, are going to be coming here by foot. We've provided ample parking for the uses that we have. We have the synagogue use. We have some rooms upstairs for ancillary uses during programming. We have a large basketball court and also a playground. We've had ample study of the setback from the street. So we have lots of landscaping, greenery. We're trying to maintain a site that is both visually appealing and exciting for this section of Park Heights Avenue that we really see as part of a renaissance to the community. There are entrances both on the corner if you go to view 1, you would see the main entrance of Es Chaim. And there's also a prominent entrance off of 7 Mile Lane and an extra from the rear parking so that and also from the basketball court. We really have made this a spine where everybody's coming in from all different directions and they're equally welcoming. There's not a backside of this building.
So if I may just interrupt you for a second. So we're going to refer to the renderings, which are they start about midway through the packet, and they start with diagrams that look like these. And so you had just mentioned view 1, and I think you mentioned another view as well. So if we could start with view 1 and discuss that.
Absolutely. I'm going to turn that over to Robert Charles, the project architect.
Okay, thank you. Robert Charles, R-O-B-E-R-T, last name Charles, the project designer, Levin Brown Architects. Okay, this very first view is the corner on view 1 of Park Heights and 7 Mile. It is a pedestrian-friendly intersection, okay? This is a celebratory entrance where when you come to approach the facility, if you ever walk that community, it's beautiful to walk. It's so beautiful to walk. When you're at that intersection coming from the housing across the street or any other of the places in the area, that is a very high-profile corner. So we made that corner to have a nice glass facade in there for the entrance. We had covered canopy for the elements in there. We also have elements for the stair tower, which we broke down where it's not just one large 4-story building. We broke the building up with different colors and textures, and the second story of the building overhangs the first story so that we have visual articulation to help people to approach the building and know their wayfinding to it, because that's one of the things that you see people get lost about with wayfinding. So if you're coming from 7 Mile or Park Heights, if someone drops you from the corner, you have access to it. If you go to the right-hand side of that page, you would see the main promenade entrance from 7 Mile. That's a very dramatic entrance. That's very beautiful off 7 Mile. That leads you into the core spine of the building, which a large gallery and lobby and access spaces in there that gets you into the building. So that's pretty much the nature of view 1. I'm gonna go through this a little quickly and go to view 2. View 2, you can see another view, like there's the 8-story apartment building across the street. So basically in view 2, you see on the left-hand side of the page, another view of that main pedestrian promenade entrance towards the left, okay? As you move across to the right of the image, here you will see the covered canopy entrance from the parking. So you have multiple front doors for the building. And then we also have, it's covered area so that people, if you're in the building, you can come out the building and still be undercover, but still feel the outdoor elements in there. So that's one thing with the extended overhang. If you go to view 3, you will see there we have a very particular, when we dealt with the planning department, I think Renita, I forget her last name, she was very concerned about the walk to the building from the eastern side of the building. So we show this view where you come in. It's a very visually articulate view. You know your wayfinding. You have a very highlighted color for the main canopy entrance. If I go to view 4, okay, one of the things is that when people do come, we know we had a lot of conversation about people using pedestrian access, but there will be vehicular access. We have plenty sufficient ADA according to Bria Burke's design with the ADA code. We have to deal with that for parking. But we have a very beautiful, glass rear entrance, which doesn't look rear. It's a beautiful, like you have a mall, you have different sides to enter the building and feel very valued in your approach. So that's what we have there. Now, if you go to view 5, here is a more of an overall view of the campus itself, where it shows the playground areas, which are enclosed but have vegetation surrounding it. And you have the basketball courts, which are further behind. Now, one thing that came up in our community meeting about the basketball courts was the noise, access, and people playing their good games of basketball, which I do like to do, okay? What happens is the way the site is developed, the back of the site is higher than the front of the site. So when we did the parking the basketball courts, basketball courts are submerged from the view from the neighbors beside, so that a lot of sound attenuation is picked up by the retaining walls around the basketball court. So that's one thing I wanted to make mention to that, which was a good comment. Now, if you go to view 6, you see another aerial view of that basketball court, which is submerged into the site away from the public view. So you can really get your games on. Maybe they get LeBron to come do a special session with the class in Baltimore. Okay, so that's what we have there. And then we go to the last page here, view 7. We have the view from Park Heights. So we're walking down Park Heights. You have a very articulate building view. You can also see that a part of the retaining wall on the left-hand side of the page that shields the high-level activity of basketball from the street, so you don't have that noise, particularly aspect, and children or people just access from the street, so there's a lot of protection and security with that. The last page in view 8, as we go to it, you will see here is an aerial view of the site. As the attorney Dina was saying that, the height of the building is 31 feet 8 to the roof line, okay? And as you can see here with the shade and the shadow of the different HVAC elements and the stair towers, that's only 11.9% of the 25 requirement to be under, to not be included under roof area. So we're well below that requirement in there. And the building is not up to we have 4-story buildings, 5-story buildings, 8-story buildings in the area. This is just 2-story above grade. So we have a very human scale building for this community, which is very pedestrian oriented. So in that note, that's the run through of the architectural design through our rendered exhibits. Now back over to you,
Robert,
Dino.
will you be discussing the building height?
Oh, yeah, let's go. I can go into the building height. If we go into.
Do we start with A201 or?
Yeah, let's go with A201. Okay, let's go to page A201, which is it's like 4 pages in.
So I just want to.
Yes, sir.
Oh, there is a maximum building height variance.
There is not.
There is not?
There was one applied for, but it seems
Not.
like or maybe just in our memo, but.
Okay. Well, let's just keep it to the things that we need to discuss for the variance.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Ms. Burke, can you address the impervious surface of the site and what drives the need to have the 63%?
Sure. Hello, my name is Bria Burke, BRIABURKE. I'm a representative with CMR Engineers. If you go to our site plan on the second page, it is the same site plan as the first page. This shows our stormwater management facility is the only difference. So we have the 49 parking spaces as well as all of the interconnection walkways on site in our nice new basketball court, which got us to the 60% or 63% variance. We are accounting for all the impervious surface in our stormwater management. We have over 7 drains on site. I think we have 7 drains on site. It'll all be pumped underground and dispersed into 7 Mile Lane. Our stormwater management plans are currently going through the city in the BCNR process. And we are halfway through. We've already received our concept approval, so we're moving along.
So as it relates to the 40% maximum under the zoning code, how do we get to the 63%? And do you have any thoughts as to what unique factors about this particular property would justify that?
The unique factor, this site is zoned R1E, which is residential, and we are proposing to do a religious facility with a youth center, and we have parking and basketball courts. So that R1E is really for those single-family homes, and this is a different type of use. But it is a use that we see along Park Heights Avenue, as in our next-door neighbors are big multifamily with parking lots as well.
And the other zones that are right in the vicinity of this property directly on Park Heights Avenue, do you know what zone they're typically in?
I think they're higher Rs.
R5, R9?
I believe so.
Okay. And then, Mr. Charles, did you have any comments on the inability to provide the long-term parking spaces, bike parking?
Okay. Well, let me go back here. Let's just switch
You can
over again.
switch.
Sorry about that.
Okay. Well, with the parking, this is something that is raw discussion because information is new to us. However, there is there's three vestibules in the building. There's one to the plan south, there's one to the plan north in the basketball courts, and there's one to the plan east by the parking, okay? The plan east, which is a large lobby coming to the sanctuary from the parking lot, we have significant additional space in there than what's required for the typical movement vestibule in that space. So easily within that, you don't want the bicycles going deep into the facility because it ruins the carpet, it ruins the tile and all those things. But a vestibule is an interstitial space between the outdoor and the indoor. So what we have is that with that additional space, what's shown there is 2 benches in there on either end of that, okay? That area can be converted to bike parking within the building.
If you did that, you wouldn't need a variance.
We
Could you
won't need a
guys do
variance
that?
there because we have sufficient space because vestibule is 7 feet wide, okay? You just need 7 feet, wide to get from one door opening to the next door opening. But however, the width of that space is the entire dimension of that large lobby, and the bicycles will not interfere with any pedestrian movement within that area once they come in for long-term parking. But this is brand new discussion.
You just,
Sorry.
yeah,
Thank you.
please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So the understanding that there is potential space for bike use, the problem is since most of the holidays and most of the Sabbath, bike use is prohibited. So what we're worried about is that, you see bikes in the lobby over there, like a bike or two stored over there, and you're not even allowed to touch it. So therefore, having it in such accessible space, we believe would be a hindrance, and also, we don't want these guys, taking these bikes on the Sabbath and the holidays. Therefore, we think that since there's no practical use for the type of synagogue that we are, and since no one is riding their bike there, for most of the programming, that's why we're asking for the variance for that specific reason.
So there's a couple things there. So when you were describing the building earlier, I kept hearing the word overhang, overhang, overhang.
Yes.
So the threshold for long-term bike parking, for this case, 2 spaces, covered and secure, right? So you've got covered.
Yes.
And then now you have to figure out secure. I think the key here is that I'm still a little unclear about your programming, because my understanding is we're approving this community use. The youth that you serve are not all necessarily part of your religion. Is that correct?
They are. Everyone is Jewish.
Okay, and so so that's the part that wasn't quite clear.
Sorry. Yes, everyone is Jewish.
Because that's, so I think, but participants, particularly youth, as long as it's not, as long as they're adhering to the other days of the week that they can't, use a bicycle, there's a potential that they could ride their bike there after school, like on a Tuesday or something like that. Okay. Go ahead.
Which is why we are giving them the temporary biking spots.
So the exterior bike parking is meeting code, and then
Correct.
now we're just talking about interior
The long
bike
term.
space.
Yes.
Do you anticipate any employees using a bicycle to get to work? Okay. I think in this case, where I could agree to the variance is we remove the secure part, but if you could just include additional bike parking that's covered. So on the days, if there's kids riding their bike to school and it's raining, now their bike doesn't have to be out in the rain. And so I would just say work with your architects on either relocating or adding bike parking into one of the overhang areas. And I would give the variance for it not being secure, but that would be a condition that we would place. And so that's where I'm at right now in terms of that variance.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll build on that. The requirements for long-term biking are very minimal for the areas that you have. It's easily accommodating. Understanding religiously what the use and times of use of bikes. Same thing happens with vehicles, as I understand it. But it's very minimal, and I think it's kind of very minimal request to actually try to accommodate this in your program with such sufficient space in your floor plan. So I would like to see that considered, but I understand what you're saying as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Understand.
like it would be, I mean, I could say, figure it out. But I think I would be okay also approving the variance with the condition that it has to be covered. It doesn't necessarily have to be secured.
I'll speak to that. We have plenty of means to have it covered and not be in any pedestrian path that would interfere with the religious activity of the building. So we can work that out very, very quickly.
It's not a problem.
I have a question. I know I may have missed this when I had to go give my laptop back. If it's easily accommodated and it's not hard to find to comply with the code, then how can the board meet the variance standard, which
Well,
requires
they'll have
practical difficulty?
They'll have to talk about the practical difficulty of making it secure, essentially. So
And the uniqueness of the property with respect to that, or peculiarity.
The other, so before we also spend too much time on the bike parking thing, I want to go back to, I just also want to set folks up that I will be asking questions about impervious surface as it relates to the parking formula, because one of the things that you were coming to the table with of based on the classification, we actually probably need even less parking than we have currently planned on the site. Then my recommendation or my question would be, can you reprogram some of that parking into something that's pervious? And that could be a play surface that's pervious, that could be grass for, a area for, multi-purpose use. So that would be sort of, where I sit, I'm very comfortable with some of the different parking scenarios that are talked about. But when it comes to the impervious surface, I am less inclined to get a variance, because once you guys free up, there is a potential, based on the ratio and what you've described and your use, that you could just reprogram some of the parking into something that's pervious, and then you would not need that variance. And so that's why I would be inclined not to approve that specific
Could we
variance.
use pervious paving on portion of the lot that we've used in other projects?
Sure, but I'm
to-
saying I'm reading the variance and you're saying 40% is permitted, you're proposing 63% to be impervious. And so I'm saying, if you're also saying that you don't need as many parking spaces as you've planned, that you could reprogram the parking spaces to have a pervious surface. And so I suggested something like a pervious play surface or grass, where you could reprogram it to multi-purpose use. So just like hanging out, like on the grass, or programming a play surface with pervious play surface.
I will say a lot of our impervious surface is also, it's not just the parking lot. The parking lot is actually very minimal on the site. We have a basketball court and we have a patio and all these walkways that aren't found on normal sites. This is more like a campus, and I think that increased our impervious level.
In addition, if I may, parking was a topic of discussion when we met with both of the primary communities that we met with, and they were enthusiastically supportive of us having 49 parking spaces.
But that isn't part of the
That's
code,
not the part of
though.
the code. And I think the other thing that
Voluntarily.
tells me is that you came asking for, technically describing that you aren't even required to have 49 spaces based on the classification. And so what that tells me is, as the person submitting, that you would be comfortable with less than 49 spaces because you wanted to demonstrate that you didn't even need the 49. And so what I'm saying is that you've kind of set yourself up in a way to say, come here and say, we did the parking wrong. We don't even need 49 spaces based on this formula around usage, which we've already said, great, we agree with your usage. Now you don't need as much parking. Now you're also asking for a variance for impervious surfaces, and I'm saying you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I did the parking formula in this way, and now I still want a variance for impervious surface, when I think if you're talking about a 20% variance and you're talking about how low, I mean, you want to repeat back what you said? It was like, in the beginning you said something like we only, by this formula, we would only need like 7 spaces or something like that.
So 18 parking spaces.
18 parking spaces.
18 parking spaces.
So
And I thought, I mean, to get to your point, I thought it was important to come and present what we now view as the accurate parking calculation. And the earlier calculation was based on an
Right.
error.
So
And
I'm saying, asking the architects, if you're looking at eliminating some of the parking, how much parking would you have to eliminate to capture some or all of that 20%?
So the parking is mostly the driveway. The only areas where I could see if we eliminate parking and add a grass strip of like 18 feet, it wouldn't greatly benefit the program of the religious facility because we already programmed the space. So the basketball court and a play area, we could add more grass, but it wouldn't be a programmed area.
But that
Well-
program, sorry, go ahead.
No, maybe I can help out a little bit. So I think that what Ms. Cornish is explaining here is that you're over parking your project. Instead of providing additional parking spaces, give that back to pervious area. So on the east side of your property here, you have numbers 31 through 49 of parking spaces. What can you lose in order to mitigate the amount of parking or impervious area that you're requesting a variance for?
Can I just say one thing? I think I totally understand what you're saying. I think when we were talking about how many spaces we're technically only able to put, that wasn't saying that's what our needs are. We're just saying there was 18 parking spots. However, for our weekday programs, there are people that come and they drive there, and there's really no parking on 7 Mile. On that whole strip in front of the building. So there's nowhere really for people to come during the week, and less than this amount of spots would seriously hinder the congregants that do come, because people go, it's not just a Saturday, it's every single day, 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and night prayers that people drive also. So if there's another way to figure out how to do that, because if we have less, the neighbors also
It's just going to
will
be
go.
hard for me to find the reason to approve the variance on impervious surface if you have also said you don't need as much parking. Like that's so how this may end up is I could say yes to all the parking variances that you've requested because that's fine. But I may not be able to say yes to the impervious surface variance because the way I'm looking at it, it's been demonstrated that you may not get 20% out of reprogramming some of the parking. So you may still need a variance, but you may not need a variance of as much. And so I think what we're trying to say is we understand you can't, if you're looking at sidewalk, ADA sidewalk, and the actual building, the parking lot may not provide enough for you to not need a variance, but you might be able to increase the amount of pervious surface. And I think where you can do that is the parking, because you're already asking to not build as much parking as, depending on how you look at the project, you would need, because you've explained that you don't have a lot of car use on certain days of congregation. But I also think that in general, like I totally get that, yeah, maybe you need more than the 8 spaces of the code. That seems reasonable. But now we're stuck in these requests that are kind of in opposition to each other. So it's not me saying, I don't think you should have parking. It's actually me telling me that you can't put more pervious surface on the site when you've already demonstrated that you don't necessarily need 49 specifically. That makes those variance requests in conflict with one another. And that's sort of where we have to look at the threshold of, is this unique or is this necessary for the project? And so I'll leave it there because I think I've made that point, and I'll leave it up to.
I think would co-sign everything from a legal perspective that variances are supposed to be rare, variances are disfavored, and the board also has to find that they're approving the least possible variance, so you can't overshoot it and in this case. I will also point out that if 18 spaces is what you need for this site, then 36 is the max, and more than 36 would require a maximum parking variance, anything over 36. So 49 would then require a maximum parking variance.
Here's what I'm going to propose. Conditional use is good. Seems like there might be some fine tuning about parking impervious surface that you might want to do to it to make sure that you're asking for the absolute maximum variance that you need. Because it is true, variances are supposed to be rare, and we're not supposed to give them out too much of a variance than absolutely necessary for a project to be able to happen. So maybe we sort of table this discussion. You guys come back maybe in a couple weeks with maybe some updated renderings, or tell us what you want to do about the parking variance and impervious surface. Because, I think you'll need a unanimous decision because there's 4 of us today. And so it looks like we might not get to that today.
Got it. So if I may interject here for also 1 second. So with obviously the code it goes ahead and mentions that if we look at this as a fire rated, you have the interior space, right? So that's one way. Then we also have the other side where it is a community center. There are teens there. There will be a fluctuation of people coming in. So there's the code aspect, but there's also the functionality use of a building of this size that's needed. We believe, part of why we bought the second property to go ahead and help the community was parking was a big issue for the community as a whole, right? We went ahead, we put signs out there, we spoke to community members, and parking was a very big problem. So in order to go ahead and address and not have a ton of opposition, we went ahead, we decided outdoor play area is also very scarce within that area. There isn't a lot of outdoor play area for the community members. There are for people to come to who have kids, whether they're in the program or not. So we went ahead, we decided to go ahead and benefit the community. We're going to go ahead, buy the building next door, add additional parking, which goes ahead and helps everyone out in that area to go ahead and benefit, because 7 Mile, there's a lot of accidents that happen there. And we went and did this all in positive outlook to help the community out. So yes, I understand the variance side of it. It's rare and it shouldn't be given. We actually did this in that manner to benefit the community and to benefit that area. Additionally, the city went ahead and required us to extend the sidewalk from 3 feet. We're going to 6 feet now. So that impacted our impervious. There was a lot of different requirements that were given to us to go ahead and enhance that. And instead of us fighting and opposing it, I think we looked at it and said, this is a community value, and we want to go ahead and offer that. And that's kind of mixing into everything. By eliminating parking, it's going to cause tremendous issues in that little corridor. For Park Heights, like they mentioned before, it's a very high trafficked area. So by going ahead and lowering it, I believe we demonstrate tremendous amounts of outdoor space, large walkways, sidewalks, to make the area nice and appealing. But also if it was shrunk and people have to park on 7 Mile, or any of the side roads, I believe the amount of public people coming out would be tremendous.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're taking the community into consideration for all your decision making for your project. That's exactly what we should all be doing, right? When we do our facilities, especially this one's fantastic. But again, to the points of the board and Ms. Witt, I think there's some tightening up of your program that could be happening to minimize the amount of variance requests that you're asking for. Impervious areas, parking, we understand there's a demand and there's some community requirements and maybe some needs for that, which would be taken into consideration. But I think that there's also some, especially the new information Ms. Witt explained about the maximum parking allowable, something that needs to be taken into consideration when you ask for these variances. So I think there's some adjusting that needs to happen to the site plan, in my opinion.
So I think the other thing to note is that a community is always going to want more parking. That's like the number one fear they have when they have new development. But I think where some of the tightening up from you all also needs to occur is that you're asking for conflicting variances. And so on one hand, you're saying, we don't need bike parking or we don't need this because people can't drive or bike to our facility. But then we can't do less parking and do more pervious surface because the community wants to see a maximum amount of parking. So now that we're in the classification, I would just ask Ms. Witt, now that we've approved like the conditional use, can we advise them of like, what's the threshold for parking maximum? Because I'm a little confused now that
Yeah, so parking, the maximum amount of parking that you can provide without a variance is double the minimum amount of parking. So if the minimum is 18, the maximum is 36. So if you want to provide more than 36 spaces, you need to make a variance argument for why you have to provide that much, which is pretty difficult to do given that variance standard is tied to the property itself and not to neighborhood preference for parking.
Yeah, so that was my point, is it's tied, it's a law that is tied not to neighborhood preference. And so I think you can probably figure out a way to balance all of those things if you come back to us with some revised plans. And I think specifically working through this idea of pervious surface, you're going to need a 23% variance. Can you come and ask for less? You may not be able to get to 0, but could you get to 15? You know what I mean? So that's just an example of where we want to see folks going is don't ask, like, we might be more inclined to say yes to a variance if we can very clearly see that you've asked for the bare minimum of that variance. And so I think that's where this plan could get tightened up a little bit.
If I may, in order to address the issue of the maximum, the variance to the maximum number, I wonder if it would benefit us for the board to consider granting a second conditional use for community center. Because I think that would allow us to have some flexibility as it relates to the number of parking spaces and perhaps get closer. Then we only get closer to the 49 that we actually have, and then only have to deal with the variance for the impervious area.
So that would be a new application, correct? Or no?
Well, would it?
Not necessarily, no.
It's up to the board if they want to accept a minor change on the record, but that would increase y'all's required parking to 93 parking spaces.
Which happens to be what we asked for. We asked for 49 in lieu of 93.
I mean, that's
It's closer to what you had.
between you guys. I think it doesn't help with that becomes then a choice, I think, to a certain extent, but it's up to the board. I mean,
Yeah, I
Is it really, getting to the issue of self-created hardship, the evidence was that we are really the only property along Park Heights Avenue, that fronts on Park Heights Avenue, that's in this particular zone. The other zones have a much higher impervious surface threshold. The R5 and the R9, which are the predominant zones on Park Heights Avenue, are 60%. And we are actually developed at 63 on this plan because this use is really, it happens to be permitted by conditional use in the zone, but there's no allowance given for that in the zoning regulations for the impervious surface coverage, which is more geared toward the impervious surface that you would find in a detached single-family dwelling, which is what you would typically find in the R1.
Then why did you request place of worship with accessory teen community center? I mean, that's what's on your application.
Yeah, because we thought that
we voted yes on that.
Yes, I understand. And that, because when we were thinking about it, that's what we thought that the use was, we thought that was a classification for the use. Looking at, in particular, the definition of place of worship, where it speaks to things like accessory programs for youth and teens and elderly and other folks.
And so, I mean, it's a difficult position that you've put us in because now it's like that preferred conditional use that you asked for created all these sort of interesting challenges with approving the other variances, because now we can say why you can meet some of these requirements, or you could at least meet them to a different degree than what you're requesting. And so I think that's where I'm a little stumped, and where I would just sort of recommend either come back and ask for the usage that you want so that so that I would sort of look at it as, what do you really want the variances to be? And then say what the use that leads you to that place that is most important to you. Does that make sense? Like, you put the use first, so we voted on the use first so that we would get the numbers for all these other variances. But that led to some of these concerns where we were able to sort of suss out opportunities for you to ask for a less variance on some of these things. And so I think that's why going back, revising the plans, and then interrogating some of these questions that you all have about what do we want, how can we come back and ask for the bare minimum of the variance, I think we'll end up with like a less confusing conversation that I'll feel better about kind of making some clearer decisions on the variances. Right now, everything just seems sort of in conflict with one another, and I just want to make sure we get them the best use of the site and then the least permissive variance that we can get to.
Council, I'm going to give you an opportunity to go back, talk to your client, and speak with the architect, figure out if there's a way you guys can sort of polish this site plan and application so that we can all get to yes.
Okay.
You can reach out to the BMZA's office to find another date when you guys would like to come back to speak to us. Is that fine?
That's fine.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so we're done with the zoning appeals docket for today. I think that Justin wanted to go into closed session with you guys briefly. His bag is here, but I will say that we're done with the open session for today for sure. And so the Charm TV portion can end here, the court reporting portion can end here, and I'll try to find Justin.
We are off record.